find me on Twitter debating.
Okay. What? But I'm asking you, what do you think the state of the play is?
Oh shit, my bad. I thought we were just doing intros. Oh, my bad. All right. So, I was
Is
on the
anyone
last.
prepared? It's 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready, Papa.
My bad. I just misheard you. That's all.
Gibbs, give us your take.
Hey, I'm Admiral Gibbs. You know where to find me. You know what time it is. Anyway, let me tell you what I think. I wasn't going to do this, but I am going to do this because it's the Whick election bonanza today. I am excited to predict that it's going to be a goddamn landslide across the board for the Republicans. The red wave is coming. We're going to get Senate majority, slight majority. We're going to get House majority, and we're going to get the presidency. I'm calling it right now. People are sick of the dishonest Dems and their elitist attitude, lying to people's faces so blatantly that even a brain-dead newt can figure it out that they're lying. I'm excited. It's going to be good times.
Okay. Kind of boy, what's your read on things? Red wave?
Yeah.
Blue wave? What are we talking?
Yeah, I mean, I think directionally, and yeah, I guess I'm a Kana boy on YouTube and Live and Learn and Three Wonks and all that stuff. But yeah, I guess I take the opposite optimistic view that that Admiral Gibbs takes, but for the Democrats, right? Where I think there's a sufficiently large number of things that coalesce into what I feel like will ultimately be a Kamala victory. That amongst the swing states will still be close. I mean, within 2 to 3 points. But I think will be convincing, and I think the fraud claims that will inevitably come afterwards are going to look really, really stupid in hindsight. This is pre-hindsight, let's say, that I'm expecting, and we can get into those reasons as the debate actually starts or the discussion.
Okay,
yeah, I'll finish up now if you want.
Go ahead, Tyler, please.
So, it's a 50-50 race. If you look almost anywhere, everyone's going to tell you it's a 50-50 race. It's a toss-up. So there's a lot of other things you can look at just besides the swing state polling, and I think if you start looking at the fundamentals of the race, you see that the GOP is 4 of the 5 fundamentals nationally, and if you go state to state, some of it's 5 to 5 because abortion isn't a top 5 issue in some states. So you really see the GOP have the advantage there. I think at the end of the day, you're going to probably see them take it away. I'm going to go ahead and just say Trump's probably going to win it. He's probably not going to win it by a huge margin. I don't think it's going to be a landslide. It's just, if we look at the data now, we look at the historic polling era with Trump, even if you negate 80% of it, he still has the victory with RCP, who was the closest aggregate in the 2020 cycle. So I'm just going off the data. I think Trump's got it.
Okay, thanks for being here. Lactoid, are you prepared now?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Lactoid. You can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Yes, I will still call it Twitter. I think that Trump's going to win, but I think it's going to be pretty close. I think all the polling is very close. There's razor-thin margins. As very recently, Trump lost a little bit of his massive poly-market advantage from 67% down to 60%. So, things aren't looking too good on the last couple days here before the election, comparatively to where he was before. But overall, I still think that he has the edge. My prediction of the swing states is I could be wrong, but my prediction is Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania are going to go to Trump. Arizona is also going to go to Trump. I think Harris is going to win Nevada and Michigan. And I think Wisconsin is a total fucking coin flip. I got no idea who's going to win that. But those are my predictions for the other swing states. And that'll be enough for Trump to get it.
Okay. And we are last minute, right? And I appreciate you for coming on. Sizzling, please.
Hello.
What are your thoughts here?
It's going to be it's very, very close. Very, very close. It's all about the swing states. I don't know if we're going to get Georgia. I've seen a couple people say we're going to get Georgia. I don't think so. It's Democrats. My personal. I think North Carolina is probably likely. Wisconsin, Michigan. What is it? Ohio, Michigan. Yeah. All right. All that's going to Democrats. Nevada, probably Democrats. And Arizona, that one's probably a coin flip. That one's probably the coin flip. Pennsylvania, that one's going to be. I think that one's going to be the one that's talked about for the first time, though. That one's going to be all the Republicans are going to contest that so heavy. And I think that will flip it to Democrats, I think, personally.
Fair enough. So, to Econoboy and people who think that Kamala has this, right? What is Kamala's path to victory here? Like, when you say she's winning, can you give us a taste of what you think is a likely map when it comes to, like, we wake up the morning of the November 6th, the voting has been tallied. There's still some votes outstanding, right? But we get most of them in. What's the map looking like, and why is it a Harris victory? Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, presently I would predict that she wins every single swing state. I'm most skeptical about Arizona, and this also is not my final prediction. I think also one thing to keep in mind is that I'm extremely open to being wrong. The lack of clarity in the polls means that basically everyone has to make a conjecture-based narrative, educated guess as to like what they presume the final results will be. I just think it's most plausible to say that Kamala is going to win every swing state. What does that path actually look like? I think that for a number of reasons that in hindsight it'll be clear. I think that the Democratic to Republican enthusiasm gap is bigger than it was in 2020 when Biden did win. I actually have been saying that I expect turnout to be lower, but actually some of the early voting numbers seem to indicate that turnout might actually be on par with what it was in 2020. And I would say such an environment probably favors Democrats just because Democrats have been like more sort of stubborn about voting ever since Trump came into office. And part of that explains why we overperformed our polls in 2022. And I think the polls are probably undercounting Kamala. There's that funny stat that CNN wheeled out. Some people would say that it's cope, but you can just follow it and just see that it's true that the polls do consistently underestimate one of the parties, one of the candidates. But they don't do that for more than 2 elections in a row. And this is very behaviorally understood. Well, it's just because pollsters will adjust their polling methodology to try and account for underperformances in their polls from previous cycles. They've done that twice in a row. They've done that twice in a row for Trump, and I think that they're seriously overcorrecting in that regard. Not necessarily for Trump's level of support, but for the amount of undecideds. And I think those undecideds are overwhelmingly going to basically turn towards Kamala, which is the opposite of what we saw in 2020. The top line polling in 2020 was reasonably accurate, but it's just that so many of those undecideds went towards Trump. But I think the polling error will be the reverse in this
What's the
election.
difference between 2020 when it comes to the independents, right? The undecideds, I should say, right? So your claim is that the undecideds, in your view, are going to flip, right? And they're going to flip towards Kamala more than they are going to flip towards Donald. Why?
I think most of the polling would indicate that independents are preferring Kamala in this election. The early vote, and we could say that early voting independents are more likely to tilt Democrat, but that would call into question in general the narrative that early voting for Republicans is good. I don't think that the early voting numbers for Republicans are particularly good. That
Why do
in
you not think that?
conjunction,
Like pretty much all the stuff I'm seeing is saying that Republicans are overperforming in early voting.
Yeah.
Is it compared to like 20, or is it compared to like Democrats?
I mean,
Well,
in
it's
general, I think compared to anything, they're overperforming.
Yeah, I'm just looking at polls of basically people who have already voted, which is to say people who have engaged in the early voting process. And it seems like pretty much all those polls across the board shows about 60% of those people voting for Democrats. And that's important because just looking at party registration isn't really good enough because some portion of Republicans and Democrats will cross-party vote, and we don't know how independents are voting in that regard, or we can't reasonably predict it. And so just looking at the polling, it seems like what we're probably going to see as soon as voting is actually closed on Tuesday, we're probably going to see the Democrats open up, some marginal lead in all these states, and it's probably going to close marginally as same-day voters, as like election day voters actually start to come in.
So to compound on one of his points really quickly, he was talking about I just lost the clip of it here I had. He was talking about voters overpolling and underpolling the Democrats. So in all but Mitt Romney's 2012 election, polling has continuously and constantly underpolled candidates. Mitt Romney was the only person in 40 years to be overpolled, and it was only by a half a point. So generally, both parties are underpolled. So there is that absolutely. And one big thing, the New York Times Ipsos lady, I don't remember her name, she was talking about it on the 538 podcast. A lot of pollsters right now, less reputable ones, are using this technique called wing for previous ballots. They'll take previous elections that you voted in and assume they know how you're going to vote if you're a less likely voter. And it's super unreliable. So we absolutely could see some polls overweighing Trump 100%. I just don't see after. I mean, I want to look at that CNN thing you said, because from what I know, in the last 40 years, the only time the polls have overweighed Republicans more than Democrats was that 2012 election. Otherwise,
I have a question.
I was just going to say, I think also in part why I'm a little bit bearish on Republicans' chances is because Republicans are doing something that historically they have not been able to do, which is basically try to get unlikely voters to vote for them. Now, like if you poll unlikely voters, they'll say, "Oh, I vote for Trump." Like something like it's like plus like 15 or 20 for unlikely voters will say that they're going to vote for Trump or they would vote for Trump if they did actually vote. And people will say that that's because Democrats have lost their edge with unlikely voters. You might think of those people as like people of color or like poor people who just don't vote, but they would vote Democratic if they did vote. The problem is that the reason that polling has changed is compositional, right? It's because so many Democrats have been pulled out of the unlikely voter pool and pulled into the likely voter poll. And so Republicans are sort of fighting to get this low propensity people to out and vote, and that's in conjunction with a terrible ground game, a totally mismanaged ground game, a historical lack of reliance on those types of voters, which is to say less experience actually getting them out to vote. The opposite is true with Democrats in both regards. That just seems like a clean narrative to explain like why and how Kamala would end up winning in 2024.
Have you seen Nate Silver's stuff? That's the pollster I've been seeing a lot of, and it seems like he's been doing a lot of that overcorrection that you were talking about.
Nate Silver just builds a model and then plugs things into the model and lets it go on its own. He doesn't do any sort of sorting or methodology after.
But like
the problem with Nate Silver is that like I think the problem, and I'm not saying like a guy like Lichtman makes more sense than Nate Silver or something. I'm just saying that in general, like the problem with a lot of these polling, these like essentially, Nate Silver has said like his model is just a fancy polling aggregator, and of course that is true. But the problem is that we just simply know for a fact that the polls are not giving us much useful information right now. That's because the top line polling isn't even above 50%. But we know for a fact, I suppose I can't say we know for a fact because obviously I can't see into the future, but we seem to have reasonably good evidence to say that third parties are not going to get very much vote this year. It's just not going to happen, which is to say that almost any candidate that wins almost any state this year is going to get probably a majority of the vote. And so when your polling aggregate is like, oh, Arizona 48-47, Trump Harris, well, how useful is that polling aggregate? Like, we know that it's wrong. Yeah, exactly. So we have to make assumptions as to how those undecideds are being counted, who they'll vote for.
I agree that the polling data is totally wrong. How many of y'all have taken part in any of these polls recently? Anybody?
I've never been asked.
Like, I've gotten asked like 3 times recently because San Antonio, where I live, is actually like a battleground area. And the way these polls work, now this is an anecdotal example, but all right, I'm Hispanic. I'm white Hispanic, and I'm Republican. Now, I don't know if you know the demographics of San Antonio, but white Hispanic Republicans don't make a very large majority, right? And so they'll ask you all these questions, and then they get to the end, and they go, "Oh, well, what are your ethnicity, if you don't mind answering?" And they go, "Okay, Hispanic." They go, "Well, would you call it yourself white Latino, whatever Latino, all these different choices." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm white Latino, right?" And then they go, "Okay, what party do you identify with?" And I go, "Oh, Republican." And they go, "Oh, okay. Well, we don't actually need your data. We've already polled a significant number of people with your same ethnic and racial stereotypes that meet your polling data." And I'm like, "Really? Well, this isn't biased at all because there's just so many white Hispanic Republicans here in San Antonio. Like, it's clearly biased polling. It's just another sales tactic. It's also just another tool the dishonest left is using to act like they're going to win this election. But it's pretty clear the average person is just sick of these blatant dishonest tactics, like bad polling." So I absolutely agree with Econoboy's assessment of polling being terrible and worthless.
To kind of get a little more people in the discussion here, Lactoid, right? What you think that it's going to go to Trump and it's going to be close, right?
Yeah.
What does Trump's path look like when you wake up on November 6th? The polling, most of the votes have been counted, right? What does the map look like and why?
Yeah, so I think he wins Georgia. I think he's polling the best in Georgia. I think Georgia and Arizona are the 2 swing states that he's polling the best in. And I think that historically Trump overperforms in his polls. He did in 2020. He did in 2016. I understand there's people saying that there's some correction for that, but I don't know how accurate. I mean, I guess I'm not privy to all the inner machinations of these algorithms that are and what sort of overcorrection they're doing. But the situation right now seems to be very different than in 2020. And it would appear to be a situation that would give Trump better polling odds. And all the betting markets agree with me. So, people, they'll talk shit about betting markets. Hey, it's not actually all that good. It's successfully predicted every single presidential election since 1980, with the exception of Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, right? The betting markets were in favor of Hillary Clinton. So, I mean, we want to talk about, Lichman being, accurate historically. Betting markets are also very accurate historically. And Donald
You have
Trump,
to add some context to that, though, right?
Well, what's the
Because they're
context?
accurate. They're accurate on the day of the election. So I'm going to be watching the betting markets closely on the day of the election. But what we're seeing in betting markets across the board right now is a huge convergence where a bunch of people are saying, "Oh, it's free." They're selling, dollars for 43 cents or whatever to bet on Kamala Harris. And so if you look at betting markets right now, there's huge convergence because of all those radicals who are not voting for, but betting on Trump over and over again. And so what'll be interesting to see is on election day if that convergence has actually fully flipped the forecasted election winner. Because right now on the betting market that I'm looking at, it's literally gone from like 60% Trump's going to win all the way down to 53%. Like they're very close, and the rate of convergence seems extremely, extremely quick.
There
like
is
it would
more
converge by election.
There is more convergence. I mean, I'm looking right here, at least on Poly Market. I mean, it was at 66% just a few days ago, October 29th. And now he's dropped to 59.7%. So just close to 60%. I think it's probably true. There's going to be some convergence. But I mean, until that happens, I'm going to use that as a piece of evidence here that Donald Trump is, again, more likely to win, right? The polling the betting markets seem to be reflecting the polling averages, which is some of the best polling that Trump has ever had when you compare at least to the 2016 and 2020 election. And I just think that the overall sentiment right now, there's a couple things that are not going Kamala's way. I mean, she didn't win a primary. She was just sort of inserted, and I don't think that she's really drawing the same kind of enthusiasm that Biden did in 2020.
Also, the early voting numbers are also playing big in the poll market.
Compared to 2020, I would say so. Yeah.
Hold on. I want to get the mic to sizzling. He's been trying to get
Okay, Lactoid, do you think it's possible that there's like any kind of like parties trying to influence betting markets, try to like sway voters? Is it possible?
I've thought about this, and so I had a conversation with a friend of mine who actually ran some gambling websites a while ago, and he basically talked to me about odds and how this stuff works. And it is possible. The problem with it though is if this is actually what was happening, like it would be in an economic sense rational for people to start putting a whole bunch of money on Harris and even it out, right? Unless there actually was some reason to believe that Donald Trump was going to win. And so the fact that like on every betting website, Democrats aren't doing that,
and that is what's happening.
Well, it's happening, but keep in mind, like it's went from 67% chance Trump victory down to 60, at least on Polymarket. And I'm looking at
the other stuff on Polymarket.
RCP, Real Clear Politics. They have an average of all the different betting websites. Every single one has Trump in the high 50s or the 60s, and every single one has Harris in the 30s.
I think that's all it's communicating. People's like want Trump to win. That's all it's communicating.
Yeah,
there's certain people that really want
Trump
to
win. That's
how gambling works.
Kind of in a way.
No.
Let's make an argument.
That's not how normal gambling works, but that's how political gambling is working. We are now seeing people constantly, instead of using like any kind of like polls, which I think talk more about how polls are like kind of bullshit anyways, but they're not even using those like normal polls people are using. They're using Polymarket every chance they get. Why?
Well, hold on. Wait. Just to be clear, the reason why people are talking about Polymarket is because it's a projection, right? People are, saying what's the percent likelihood. It looks like a bigger, I guess, percentage than the actual polls, which are very close, as I've said. But it's hard for me to like, if Donald Trump is ahead in the polls, the polling averages, which I just checked, he is, when he's ahead on all the betting markets, like it almost seems like you got to be pulling at some very like vague kind of specifics in order to like get this idea that Harris is going to get a blowout.
No,
like
I think it's a projection from conservatives who have over the years saying big money is influencing tech, and now they're trying to use their big money to influence.
I wouldn't say a blowout.
Then why is it reflecting the polls?
Why would they do that in like gambling websites where they? Okay, all right, let's just take we just take your own logic, right? Why would they do it like there and not just make a super PAC or a PAC and just start spending the money like that way, like getting out there on their own? Like what you're saying doesn't make sense at all.
They can give their money back if Trump wins. If Trump wins, there is no loss technically.
Or they're going to get their money back in the tax cuts. You would give them more the economic policy. They would gain
the win from like the veil that
this is
like a lot
this
more
is Coke logic.
There is a lot of more
Coke logic.
Well,
hold on.
One at a time.
Just want to lay it out. Okay. So wait,
Sizzling
just
can
like
lay it out. Let me give an order here.
Yeah.
Sizzling can lay it out. Then I want to hear from Econoboy, then Tyler. That's the order we're gonna go in. Go ahead.
I think conservatives used poly market from last election to now influence like elections going forward. This has not been a thing, and I don't think in politics that betting markets have been as like polls and like are used as like ways to influence people, like in Twitter or like in like even like news stories that are using poly market. I don't think that's ever happened before these two elections, and people are starting to notice that, and it does slightly influence people. People know this, so why would they not put in money into a position? And so now Democrats, we're not going to just bet on Harris and do this like weird influential game. They were going to wait until it's like close call, like right now, and now they're all going to put their money into the betting market because now, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think this because what Lactoid is saying is right? Like if you had a scenario, and to be fair, I think that there's kind of almost a hybrid between your two positions, right? Where I think that Lactoid is correct in saying and that if it was just like basically like big Republican people sort of buying up Trump's odds, I guess just to change the perceptions of the race or something. I think that is possible in one regard because obviously these are markets that don't have like an incredible amount of liquidity. And so you could imagine a group of millionaires being able to significantly sway these aggregates if they wanted to, or billionaires, obviously, that would be trivial for them as well. But I do think that, yeah, but Lactoid is correct, though, when he's saying, and again, I just think that this is what you're seeing. Lactoid is correct when he says, well, if that was really the case, that people were just like fanatically or stupidly putting their money in this regard, well, you just see a bunch of people buy that rate right back down because that's just free money for them if they think that, if they're willing to pay the bullshit tax of actually betting for an option, then they're going to be printing money. But I just think that's what you're seeing, right? You're seeing people over the last few days, this week, have seen that this is free money and it is a bunch of bullshit that these people have, fanatically or strategically bought up Trump's odds. And we'll see what it looks like on Tuesday. It's the election day betting markets that tend to be accurate at predicting the results. And I think that when we come Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, before the polls close, basically, I think you'll see those betting
just
markets.
Out of curiosity, kind of like when would be the best time to use that as a guide? Like, are we talking the morning of? Are we talking right before polls closing? Can you give us more of a general guideline?
It's hard to say. I would. Because like we've seen this before with betting markets where sometimes they readjust basically after the information is known. So my understanding is that a lot of these betting markets will pay out on January, like who's the president on January 20th. That's how they'll decide who actually wins the bet. And so these markets will continue even past the election. And so they're going to be continuously updating that whole time. So to answer your question of like what time is it going to be predictive? I would say, look at the betting markets basically right before the polls close on Tuesday, and that's kind of what I would look to. And then I would probably track it throughout tonight because you might see huge swings in the relative prediction of who's going to be president that night. If it turns out like Florida opens up and closes.
Yeah, I get you.
Well, yeah, like if it turns out Florida,
that's basically exit polls at that point.
I want to point out
if it turns
real
out
quick.
Harris. Yeah,
real quick.
Finish,
So,
finish it, Boy. You can finish.
I was just gonna say, like, if it turns out that Florida it gets close because they count votes pretty quick over there, and it's like, oh, Kamala only lost Florida by 3 points. Like, you'd probably see a huge swing in the betting markets at that point in favor of Kamala, which would probably accurately reflect, directionally the way the election's gonna go.
Can I jump in here now?
I just want to say real quick. In 2020, the betting odds had Biden ahead all the way back as far as May 30th of 2020. And in basically the 2 months prior to the election, or a little bit, I guess, in the month and a half prior to the election, Joe Biden was consistently up in the high 60s%. So, I mean, I don't know. Historically,
the whole reason they started using them is because it was accurate. That's why they started putting them in the news.
It was ahead the whole time, though. That's the difference between that and this election.
Let me jump in here, because betting markets, every year I hear a different statistic that's supposed to be the one thing you can separate out from the thousands of other statistics. Is going to be the defining characteristic.
The key is Tyler.
In 2020, though, it was the enthusiasm gap. And I'm calling out Sticks, Hex, and Hammer. This was his big thing. The enthusiasm gap. 40 points higher for Trump. He's got it in the bag. And then, he didn't. So At the same time, betting markets, as well as like with Hillary, there was one other thing. It was favorability polls, like the favorability of the person themselves and not how they're doing at their job, just how much you like Donald Trump. It's always lined up. These are just things that generally line up with who wins. Just like taking in and spending more money generally lines up with the more popular candidate because they're more popular, they have more people donating to them, thus they have more money to spend. Same thing with all these things. You're more enthusiastic to vote for the better candidate, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win. It's just an indicator, and the betting market's just another one. With the betting markets, they go by money. Now, if everyone was limited to the same amount of money like they are the same amount of vote, that'd be one thing, but you can go in there and 20 people can spend $20 billion, and it's the same as 20 billion people spending $20, but it doesn't come out that way in the vote. Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing I want to make for that point is sampling bias. The people that tend to gamble online are generally heavy men. Men tend to have gambling addictions and gamble much more often.
Well, so, right, but Biden was so far ahead for so long in 2020, like very accurately.
But that's the difference between this election and the last one was that there was no coherent, there was no like data you could point to in 2020 to say Trump has a reasonably high chance of winning this election because he was hugely ahead in the polls that entire time. Whereas this election has genuinely seen swings back and forth between who's going to win.
But this is why I've said it's going to be razor close. And right now, like the polls are favoring Trump, but you guys you're saying no, Harris. I mean, I think you said that you're on the opposite position of Gibbs, that you think it's going to be a blowout for Harris. I think every swing state except for Arizona, I have you down as predicting for Harris. I mean, if the polling says otherwise and the betting markets say otherwise? I mean, it seems to be pretty.
Well, again, there's
hubris a little bit.
There's an old saying.
Can we talk about polls?
It's not hubris because I've already conceded I'm open to being completely wrong. We have to ultimately make educated guesses in this regard because of the polling such that it is. There's an old saying, I think it's in statistics, so got an old saying down in Texas, but there's an old saying in statistics which is something along the lines of when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure, right? And so what we have to keep in mind with the betting markets, polling aggregates, polling itself, and then all these polling, these models that pollsters will come out with is that all of these things are interdependently intertwined, right? Like you have people who adjust their polls based on the polling aggregates, vice versa. The polling, like the markets themselves, are going to be heavily based on how people are polling. That's why these aggregates and the polling aggregates and the betting markets tend to follow each other. And so I think I've laid out what I think is a reasonably coherent narrative as to why I think the polling itself is highly suspect, or at the very least not very predictive of how the election will turn out. Which is to say, as a domino effect, things like the betting markets, I would expect to readjust as we get to basically closer and closer to the polls actually closing. And again, I just have to point out, like that is what we're seeing on the betting markets is like a really significant convergence within the last few days up to the close of the polls on Tuesday.
It's a significant convergence, but they are still very far apart. Can I ask you? And I would like an honest. I mean, I want to. Let's assume we were where we are now, but Harris was ahead in all the polls. And wouldn't it be fair that, I mean, if you were, let's say you were arguing with somebody who's like super pro-Trump, you would be hammering them with those polls. Am I wrong on that?
Not the prediction market.
I don't think so. I mean, like, I think, 2020 and 2016 has made me significantly more skeptical of like polling aggregates, just generally speaking. I think polling is still really good data to predict like how people feel and, generally speaking, where the election actually is going to go. But I think that, of course, there's a good reason, there's a good set of reasons this time around to expect that the polls are probably undercounting Kamala. And by the way, you're sizzling, you're hot micing like crazy. I don't know if anyone else hears this.
So I just want to point out here, in 2020, this is anecdotal, it's just one state I looked up really quick while everyone was talking. RCP hit the nail on the head. Their aggregate was exactly how Pennsylvania turned out. 538 was almost 5 points off. The betting markets were almost 12 points off. So in polling, RCP nailed it, nail on the head, where betting markets were over 10 points away in that specific state.
But that's because RCP is just historically, because they include so many more right-wing pollsters in their aggregate. And I'm not saying RCP is like, I guess I don't know the motivations of how they aggregate their polls, but the point is that they are historically trend significantly more conservative than polling aggregates. And again, if RCP was truly like an accurate polling aggregator, we might not we might not expect that. Oh, they just consistently poll more conservatively than other traditional aggregates. It's like, well, we just see the same thing this election cycle. So I don't know if that's like a reason to believe that the RCP aggregator is just like necessarily more accurate.
We'll find out on like the 9th or 10th.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I really am open to being completely wrong about this. I mean, I just think that my educated guess is just.
Well,
I
why
just think
would
that
you?
there's good
Let's
reason.
explore that for a minute. Let's explore that for a minute. It comes out, okay, and I want to ask the opposite question to Lactoid in a minute, right? Or into Gibbs as well in a minute. But I'll
Mhm.
start with you since you're here. Ghana boy, you wake up and it turns out that no, Trump won all the swing states. Why were you wrong? Like, what happened or what
Yeah,
occurred that was like, oh, oops, right? I got this wrong.
yeah.
I read this wrong. Whatever, right? Why?
I think the only plausible explanation as to why I would be wrong, which is entirely plausible. Again, it's a very legitimate thing to say. It's just I think there's less good reasons to believe that. Is it just turns out these low propensity voters did turn out and they overwhelmingly voted for Trump, and that'd be a plausible reason to expect that I would be wrong, and that's what I would expect to be the case if I turn out to be wrong on Wednesday or Thursday next week.
Okay, Gibbs and Lactoid. This one's to you mostly. You wake up, Gibbs, your prophesied blowout turns out to not be the case. And in fact, Harris just tidily cleans up. Why? What went wrong? Why were you incorrect?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be happy when I wake up, because if you're a good gambler, you're going to go, oh, shit, well, I bet on the underdog and I won a bunch of money. So that's why I know this poly market bullshit that y'all keep spouting is stupid, because I want Trump to win, but I saw the odds were 67%. And guess what I did? I wouldn't put money on Kamala, so she wins, I win some fucking money back. So, yeah,
All
that's the
money.
First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sit here. I know that y'all are wrong. This is why y'all's like whole argument about the like using the betting odds thing is just so fucking stupid. But secondly, that's the first thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna count my money.
That
Go
was
to the bank.
Lactoid that said that was
Yeah,
a good measure. Not
yeah,
us.
well, no, the betting market is a good metric. The argument that it's being influenced by Trump voters wanting to put money down on whatever is just asinine, because Trump voters are, they're gonna want to make money too. Like, it's just anyway. So first thing
Yeah,
I'm gonna do,
they
I'm
think
gonna
you're
count
gonna
my
win.
money, take it to the bank. Secondly, I'm gonna wake up and be like, damn, what was I wrong? Well, I guess I fucking bought too much of the Kool-Aid, and I'm gonna cut out all the metrics of all these different information sources I've had, and to be like, well, those guys are worthless. And like I do every election, when I find out
No, but
I
he's
was wrong,
asking
I cut
like
out those
what
election people.
what do you
What
think
do
will
I think is gonna be the
happen?
call?
Like do you think what causes Trump to lose, do you think?
What causes? I mean, anything between now and then, like they could always make another political like stupidity thing. Like I think the Tony Hinchcliffe was probably bad, but thank God Biden is
No,
there.
no, no,
He
no, no.
did
Hold on.
good.
So, hold on. Let me clarify this again, because I think Econo Boy got it close, but it wasn't. I think you need more. I think you need more help here.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you specifically
Gibbs.
asking?
Gibbs. Nothing. There's no last minute change in anything.
Okay.
It's just you thought one thing was going to happen. It turns out that thing didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? What occurred instead to make your metrics and the other people's metrics incorrect? Was it more enthusiasm that you didn't count for? Was it simply that people who said they were going to vote for Trump just stayed home? Like what happened? Does that make more
Uh,
sense?
I think that I don't know that anybody's staying home with this one. I think that I'm much more likely. I think there's going to be either there's going to be an unidentified group that plays a major role, or like a group that nobody's suspecting plays a major role and comes out and votes, or a group that people are expecting comes out and matches the numbers. Like say abortion is a massive issue, right, for the Republicans. Say women come out and just vote in mass. I can see them easily swinging it or something. I think, and then if they line up and file, and they don't have like any Republican like breakaways or whatever, I think that there's going to be something like that. It's going to be a group that nobody's expecting either overperforms, or one that nobody is expected at all, like comes out of nowhere and swings it. That's going to be my guess as to why. But I think it's going to be a reevaluation time if I am wrong based off the sources I have. That's what I think.
Got you. What about you, Lactoid? Same question. I hope you understand it now.
I hope I do too. If I wake up and God knows when this is going to be, because for some reason our election results take 4 or 5 days now to get back to us as opposed to the day of. But if I wake up and
Because they don't let them count early votes
yeah,
early.
for sure.
Right? They should.
I'm
But
sure that's the reason. But the I think women, frankly, I know that sounds like a meme, but I genuinely think so. And to put a little bit of like, I guess, evidence behind my statement, 2022 was supposed to, the midterms was supposed to be like a pretty significant Republican victory. But what we saw is a lot of the women that were describing themselves as pro-life were not actually pro-life. I hear it a lot. A lot of women specifically will say things like, yeah, I'm pro-life personally, but I'm not going to make that choice for another woman, which is just a very complicated way of saying that you're pro-choice, right? I mean, that's the whole disagreement between the pro-life, pro-choice crowd. And I think there's a higher percentage of women who think that way than we had thought, and so they will report things on polls that are actually pretty inaccurate to how they're going to vote come election time. And I think we saw this in 2022. And I mean, I think that if Trump loses on this coming election, I think that's really what it's going to be. It's just going to be a lot of like hidden women voters who, for some like abortion is, because I mean, you look at the polls on per issue, like men care about the economy and democracy, etc. For women, like all that shit's not all that important. It is abortion, like that is the women's issue, 100%, according at least for young women. And I think that crowd is going to be overwhelmingly voting on that issue. And I think with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, that's likely going to be what would shift it if it gets shifted.
Generally, oops, sorry.
Just to
No, go
be
for it.
clear, before everyone else goes, then I want to hear from Sizzling, then Tyler. You think that if you are incorrect, it is because women.
Young women specifically who they're a one issue voter where they're just like abortion. They just want to have it all the way up until birth. They're like, I should be able just to put a cheese grater as they come out like in slices. Like they just want to have abortion. Economy, democracy, none of that's important to them. It's just abortion. Yes, that group.
Okay.
If Trump loses, that'll be the group that shifts the election.
Just
Sizzling,
women
then
that lie.
Yeah, it's a demographic. Yeah.
Well, no, like just women are lying, not like everyone.
You're cutting in and out, Sizzling.
Fuck me.
Play
I think
right?
that's. I don't think that sounds right though.
Okay,
Les.
is this better?
Yeah.
Is this better? Okay, Lactoid said that it's women that are going to be like lying about how they're a single issue.
Uh-oh.
Is it just women?
Me?
I think as a demographic, it's going to be So obviously, there's people of other demographics that are going to misrepresent the way they're going to vote in the polls, or like they're going to be, when it comes time to walk in, they're going to have a change of heart or whatever. But I think that the group that's, again, if Trump loses, my prediction is the group that's going to be doing this most is going to be young women specifically, because as we saw in the 2022 midterm. A lot of women who describe themselves as pro-life, a lot of women who describe themselves as Republican, it didn't actually show. It didn't actually show when it came time to
Are we
voting.
back? Are we back? Are we here?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys can hear me? Oh my god, I don't know why.
The issue was on your end, Wick. We were able to talk just fine.
Yeah. Is my stream down?
No, it's up.
Okay, you guys can still see me. Can you hear me? Everything good? I'm sorry. I
Everything's
don't know. I don't know what happened there.
All right, Tyler, you can go.
I apologize, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. So we're talking about women generally. I think when you look at the polling and young women, young people generally, they are so left-wing that they're even to the left of the Democratic Party. And I really see, like, I've seen indications early voting for Jill Stein's actually kind of high with young people. So I feel like you're going to see a lot of young people who are in that identity politics as I identify as a woman, abortion's my number one thing. They might even be peeled off by the whole anti-war thing going on. I think the biggest women demographic that we're worried about and that both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are gunning for are going to be suburban white women. And what is a big indicator early on of that is Hamilton County in Indiana is a very middle class, upper middle class. It's in a state that's pretty much going to go one way always, but this specific district is a nice way to kind of look at how suburban people vote. So Hamilton County in 2012 went 34 points for Mitt Romney, and by 2020 it was only 7 points for Trump, and we haven't really seen a crazy amount of people move in and out of this district. So it's the voters flipping, and that's a big shift. That's 27-point shift over into the direction of Democrats. So if we see them shift back, this is a bellwether district, if we see them switch back to maybe 15, 20% points Trump, Republicans, it's a good indicator with some other places in North Carolina that I can get to later. They're going to be good indicators on how the specific white rural woman vote or white suburban woman vote is.
This brings up a good point because a lot of you have referenced swing states. Is North Carolina a swing state this election?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris just pulled $2.7 million in funding for TV ads like 3 days ago from the state. I don't think she declares it a swing state anymore.
No, the polls. I don't agree with this. The polls show her and Trump pretty neck and neck in North Carolina.
She just pulled all of her TV funding for the last week of the election.
Yeah, maybe
to dump it into other states.
Well, probably Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania is really fucking important, right?
Well, she didn't pull all her funding, just to be clear. That was a reallocation to other media markets, but they still have like a really extensive ground game and TV ad campaign there. Like they're still going to be running ads like wall to wall that whole time. So I think people look into that a little bit too much. I mean, I think that one of the things that we're kind of touching on here is that.
Do you think it's a good sign that she did that? Like, come on. It's not a good sign, Economite.
Unless, like,
so. Unless she thinks it's in the bag, there's no indication it's in the bag. Like, it's a bad sign to do that.
It could just as well. We don't know for a fact what the reason is, but it could just as easily be because they feel like the media market there is already saturated with their ads, and so they're just reallocating money to a market that they feel like they can saturate even further. I mean, that would be a very reasonable explanation. Anyway, what I was going to say was that I think we're touching on something without exactly saying it, which is that one of the reasons why compositionally the Democrats have become more likely voters is because the type of voter who's voting for the Democratic Party has become different, right? You know, like your college-educated whites have like overwhelmingly swung towards Democrats. Obviously, your postgraduate people as well. And I think that women who vote at a higher propensity to men are also overwhelmingly swinging towards Kamala, even more so than they already swung towards Biden in 2020. And again, that's just, that's part of the reason, again, why I say that I think that Democrats are going to win this election, and I think it will be, I think it'll be a bigger win than Biden in 2020. I'm a little bit skeptical on certain states, but I think that it'll be a clear victory. It just seems like women and college-educated people who are just, substantially more likely to vote, and then demographic transformation with older people dying off, and since 2020, we've had 10 million people who were boomer generation or older die, which is of course going to be a marginal effect to help Democrats as well. So. All those reasons, I think that the directions just seem to point towards, hey, if the polls are showing 50-50,
destiny kind of deal.
Well, it's just that all those old people dying off marginally does help Democrats. Same thing with like women transforming towards, Democratic voters. Most voters are women, right? And that's obviously like you'd rather be popular amongst women than men if you had to choose one. If you care about your election chances, and Trump's just going all in on trying to turn out these less likely voters and. If you're trying to turn out less likely voters, well, what's more likely? That the likely voters will determine who's going to win. So that's kind of my position.
Do we know how many how many women have been Trump supporters that have lost Trump support?
You cut out there. I didn't.
Well, no, I heard it. How many women
Trump no longer support Trump? And $10, real quick, from Pondering Politics. She put funds in Raleigh. Fucking North Carolina. Who cares? Right?
Yeah. Do we know how many Trump supporters of women have lost his support, or he's lost women's support?
Yeah, I mean the polling that I've seen shows that like if you were to compare like the gender breakdown, exit polls from 2016 show that about 54% of women supported Hillary in 2016, and then I've got it right in front of me here. About 57% supported Biden in 2020, and the polls that I see, it seems like she's aggregating to like 59-60%. So that just seems to be
the type of women matters a lot too. So like married women are more likely to be Republicans than not, right? They're more likely to be Republicans than Democrats. But when you look at single childless women specifically, the ratio skews entirely the other way. I think it was like 3 out of 4 young single childless women polled Democrat. And this is also going to be the group that's going to be most interested in abortion. So this is, again, backing what I'm saying, which is like the group that's most Democrat and is like most interested in abortion. Like if Trump loses, it'll be because there was a lot of turnout from this specific group. It's not going to be married women. It's going to be specifically like the young, childless women in urban areas, especially. That's going to be kind of the voting bloc that I think Kamala's looking for.
If Trump loses,
Hillary won married women. She won married women in 2016, and so it's definitely possible for Democrats to win married women. And you'd have to imagine. I mean, look, there's going to be some margin of women, right? I know them. We probably all know some women like this who are just like, I want a fucking woman to be president, and so I'm going to vote for a woman, right? And so I think there's going to be some like percentage of people that do that, and so I wouldn't be surprised for married women.
On the flip side, there's going to be men that are like, under no circumstance can we have a woman.
If I may, yeah, to get his point, yeah. Well, that is true. Yeah. I think that it might be counterbalanced with the effect of there are people who just don't like women and would.
Yeah,
vote
but
against women
but
because
again,
they're-
like those are. There might be some, there's going to be some weird, pick me women who are like,
Yeah.
I don't think women should be president, but that doesn't really exist in the real world, right? So it's going
No,
to be
I'm
like
talking about it
overwhelmingly.
would drive a low propensity male voter, right? Who
But
otherwise
they
would sit
he
out.
was
No.
Who would
his
be like,
overall
I
point is
can't
male
let
voters
women run this country.
are
Who
very
might
low
Yeah,
vote.
turnout.
but again, if we think about, if we just think behaviorally about what that looks like, right? It's like, okay, well, why did Hillary win married women in 2016? Well, I think that's because she, there's a lot of married women who just, hey, fuck, I want a woman to be president. That's very reasonable. And on the margin, Biden loses those people in 2020. There's probably some gender effects there, but I take your point. Hey, there's going to be some men who are stupid and idiots who say, I just don't want a woman to be president. Well, in general, men are less likely to vote, right? So I think that net
Who cares
effect
about them?
is, it favors Kamala, basically, is what I'm saying on net. So I internalize that into
No,
my
fair enough.
analysis.
That's a fair analysis, if you will. I want to hear from Sizzling now, okay? Because we
Oh,
asked
no.
Econoboy earlier, right? Lactoid says women, okay? What about if you're wrong, Sizzling?
I'm
Women
wrong.
don't come out enough? Is it still women's fault, but in the opposite direction? What do we think?
Is it women's fault in the opposite direction? I would just blame young voters again. I think I'll just blame young voters as I do every election. But
enough.
I know that's just like it's a fact of life. They'll never vote.
Screw those young voters. No, I'm.
But well, hold on. Sizzling makes a point, and I think this is another demographic advantage that Democrats have coming into this election, is that while we have had 10 million older people die, and that's a marginal benefit to Democrats, we've also had millennials get 4 years older. And when you go from being like in 2016, millennials were between the ages of like maybe like early 20s and mid 30s. Well, now millennials are between the ages of late 20s and early 40s. And the difference in your relative propensity to vote between those two ages, like those two bands of ages, is really big. It's like,
It's insane.
10 points more.
That is like the line right there. That 30-year-old like area. Yeah.
And so while at the same time you've got old people dying off, you also have millennials who seem to be stubbornly liberal, more stubbornly liberal than their historical counterparts like Gen X and Boomer generations and older than that. They're also much more likely to actually vote in this election than they were in the past. And obviously Gen Zers are like icing on the top because they're never going to vote because they're just youngsters. But, I would expect that would help.
Two things, though, that go against that, really. One, I know that you're saying they're stubbornly liberal, but as people age, they tend to start going more conservative with their voting. One, that's true. Two, this is the first time we've really seen a push for this younger voters. We've seen like into like the extreme. We have like how many we saw Vance on Rogan, Trump on Aiden Ross, Trump on all these other people. And these are like specifically aimed towards young people and younger people. I know a lot of these people aren't at voting age yet, but some are at voting age. They're getting there in this generation. They are for one of the first times in recent history coming out more conservative. The younger generations have basically seen what the left has done, and they've kind of just rejected it wholesale. They're tired of like the millennial parents that are the ultra libs, and some of the maybe not the millennial parents, but the ones right before them. They're all tired of this, and they seem like they're rejecting it outright. And if they really do pull a large swath of young voters, this might be the first time in history they vote all Republican. I think that's going to be a major factor.
I hear every election season since I've been.
I was going to say Bernie.
The people are like, the young people are going to do it this time. This time, the young people are going to come out. And it just doesn't.
Well, I think,
have they ever been targeted like this, though? Have they ever been targeted like
Sanders.
this?
No, Bernie Sanders. Let me just say this. If anyone ever was going to get young people to vote, it would have been Bernie Sanders. Can we agree with that?
About ancient Bernie, like the socialist, or the WWE persona Trump. Which one do you think is going to get the energize the younger people?
I think that was the most energized young voters have ever been. I think that's the most energized young voters have ever been.
What Gibbs is saying is, I think what Gibbs is saying, I don't know, well, I'll just respond how I would respond. But it's true that when you poll young men are more likely to be basically more conservative relative to previous generations. But then when you poll young women, it's the exact opposite. Young women are like Lactoid said, young women are like so overwhelmingly Democratic. It's kind of crazy. And so again, and this goes all the way down to young women. Young women are much more likely to vote than young men. And as Lactoid said, especially with all these abortion referendums coming out, I would not expect, typically we see 51, 52% of voters be women. I just wouldn't be surprised if it was like 53% of voters ended up being women, just like some marginal increase because They're just more activated in this election cycle, and they're more activated to vote for a woman president, to vote for these abortion referendums, and to vote against, someone like Trump, who, of course, they reasonably feel like is just a sexist and just a terrible person for women. So, I think that favors Democrats.
So these is just a couple anecdotal polls that I've been pulling up when you guys have been talking, but the number one issue for women voters is inflation, by about 4 times that of abortion. Abortion being the number 4 issue for women, tied with immigration and the border. So
you're going to need to post that. This is the exact opposite of all the
Lactoid
data I've
doesn't
seen.
I'm
believe
looking
women are
I'm looking
honest
at
polls.
Kaiser polling right now. Kaiser polling for all women.
Young women or all women?
All women.
Do you have
Not
one for young
young
women?
Yeah, I'm not worried about young women. They're low propensity voters. I'm talking about the ones that are actually going to come out. The number one thing. The number one issue is going to be inflation. And if you look at who people prefer for inflation, they highly prefer the Trump economy 2-1. I really think when you start getting into these fundamental arguments, you could see women, Hispanics, number one issue is inflation in the economy as well. You see them starting to move over as well. So I could see
the culture war is really big with Hispanics as well. Like they feel
right, but Trump doesn't have to win women. All he needs is a 3-point shift in white women in his direction from the last election, and he wins this one. That's it. So I mean, it's a huge demographic,
and it seems like he's going to make it up in the larger portions of the minority. But it seems like he's gained a lot.
I do want to ask about that actually. Thanks for bringing that up because before we transition,
you're welcome.
Things, I want to talk about Trump and the minority vote.
The Browns.
Yes, indeed. We've talked about the women's. Now it's time to talk about the other minorities. Okay. We have the panel for it right here.
Yeah.
I have seen poll after poll after poll this cycle that show more and more and more minority voters are leaning towards Trump more than in 2020, more than in 2016. He is breaking records on this. I don't necessarily know if I believe those numbers, right? And when you look at the crosstabs, cross sections, some of them seem unbelievable, right? What do we think is happening here? Why is it that at least amongst a lot of polling places, there seems to be an over propensity for minority voters, again, compared to historically, to lean towards Trump? And do we think that this will play out in the general election? Do we think that it's just hot air, or do we think there's something there? Go ahead, gang. What do we think?
I think it's definitely going to play out, especially among Hispanics. One, as the only Hispanic person here, that makes me default king of the Hispanics tonight. I will tell you one thing. Nobody cares about
this is not helping you, King.
Yeah, I know. That's great, right? I'm saying I do that on purpose. No, first thing I want to say is we're not a monolith, even though, with me declaring myself king of the Hispanics tonight, we're not a monolith. So, this Puerto Rico comment, I think it's pretty, a non-issue. It's a very small voter-based group anyway. I don't think it's a factor. Secondly, immigration, I think, is playing more than I think people realize because it's a different wave of immigration. This is a lot like of Central America and South American migration. A lot of the people that are already here, the immigrants specifically are Mexican. And I don't know if you know anything about all these countries. They all hate each other. So one, they're like, we don't want all these people coming and taking our establishment. So I think that's a big part. The culture war, I think, is playing a massive thing. Most of the Hispanics are Catholic. A lot of this culture war stuff is really sus to them. I see them shifting in droves. And then also, with these new people coming up, a lot of these people are fleeing socialist countries like Venezuela specifically, and they're seeing how all these failures, and they see these policies being implemented, and they're like, oh no, we don't want that. We saw it happen in Venezuela. We don't want that happening here. I think that's a massive shift with the Republicans with the Hispanics. I mean, Cubans have already been demonstrating this for decades now, and I think the rest of the Hispanics are catching on. That they want the immigration reform. They want, not socialist policies. They do believe there's a cultural war. I think that's the key. I think that's the key with the Hispanics. I think it's going to play a major role across the nation.
He's found a key.
As somebody who's had sexual relations with a bunch of Hispanic women in my life, I think I'm second in line to be the Hispanic authority on the panel.
Can we all just take a second? What the fuck?
The maids don't count, bro. The maids don't count.
Let's hear from Lactoid. We're gonna skip you to now.
Moving on.
Lactoid and Econoboy, go ahead.
I don't know. I think that ultimately this is an intersectional analysis. I think would demonstrate that it's going to come down along gender lines. I think men who are minorities are going to be more likely to vote Trump, and I think women that are minorities are going to be more likely to vote Kamala than in prior elections. I think that I think overall, though, this is still better for Kamala because, when we're talking about women being more likely to vote, this goes doubly when it comes to like black men and black women, for example, where black men very rarely vote. I mean, in terms of percentages compared to black women, right? Black women are much more likely to vote. And
They're
so
like in the political system, unlike black men. Like
Right, yeah.
you'll, all the poll watchers will be black women. You'll see, like
For sure. And so I'm
Yeah.
not, yeah, I think that overall, I think Harris is going to have an advantage with minorities. I think, obviously, with some exceptions.
So you don't
I
think that the polling will bear out in the actual, at least not in that instance? That you
No,
don't
I,
think
no,
that,
I think Trump's going to do a little bit better among minority men. I think that's true. I think he's going to do a little bit better among Hispanics. I think that among Jews, I think Trump is going to do better this time around than last time because of what's been going on. I do
did
think
I
that
see
there's certain minorities.
70% for Jews of Harris?
These are
Is that-
all these groups. I'm not denying. Most of them are probably still going to vote for Harris. But again, the question is, like, is it a greater percentage or a lower percentage than in 2020? I think that it's going to be a lower percentage for Harris than in 2020, and then Trump's going to make up for that.
we
The
know the
differences there
percentage
with
that
just
was
white
in
people.
2020 among the Jewish vote. I'm just very curious. Does anyone have that top of their head?
There's a huge list of like all of them, and the list I saw personally was just like white men were.
Well, the crosstabs are always going to, it's going to be mostly noise until we actually see exit polls, right? So
Exactly.
when we see exit polls, that's going to be, you're going to be able to like more definitively say how different groups voted when we have exit polls because the sample sizes are just much larger and the error on those polls is much smaller. Obviously, you can aggregate exit polls and get slightly different results, but anyway, no, I think to answer Wick's question, I think it is mostly noise. We see a kind of a slow trend of Democrats getting less of the black vote in the modern period. Obama got 95% of the black vote, then he got 93%. I think Hillary got just under 90%, and I think Biden got about 87% of the black vote. And so we see that like sort of slow decline, and it doesn't seem like off trend because of Trump. It just seems like what you're seeing is black men specifically, as the gender lines, as Lactoid pointed out, becoming slightly more conservative. But the reason why, I think in the last election we saw, Trump was polling, he's going to get 20% of the black
hold
vote.
on. Sizzling, you got to get a better connection, buddy. Like, this is really bad.
Oh, what's happening?
You're
just hot micing.
You just hot micing
Hot mic.
like crazy.
Oh, I gotcha. I can fix.
We're gonna give
Turn
you
up
one
your
more
noise
chance,
gate.
buddy. No, nothing
Yeah.
personal.
One more
right?
chance,
But
Sizzling.
for the integrity of my content, right? Like, and making it watchable,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Anyway,
yeah, continue, please.
But yeah, all the rest of what I was going to say was that, I wouldn't be surprised if Kamala gets, 87, 88, 89% of the black vote. I think I have shown that she polls better than Biden does, or did, I should say, when it comes to black people and black men and black women specifically. And I think broader minority groups are probably going to break largely along gender lines. But I think aggregately what you'll probably see is Democrats are going to get probably 65% of the Hispanic vote, probably 60+% of the Asian vote. She actually polls really well with Asian people, so maybe they get more, 67% of the Asian vote, maybe because she's Asian, obviously. But then she's probably also going to get slightly more of the black vote, if I had to guess, than Biden did, because black people do tend to vote. Like, there is definitely like a racial premium when it comes to like black people voting. They'll tend to vote for the black candidate, at least like on the margin. It does make a noticeable difference. And, Kamala does pretend to be black, so obviously that will help her in this election.
On racial lines and on religious lines, because Jewish people were brought up, there has been much talk about Dearborn, Michigan, its high Muslim population, and the effects of the Israeli-Palestinian war on the election coming up. Many are pointing to the Muslim vote and saying that it will cost or end up costing Kamala Michigan. Do we think that there's anything there with that, or do we think that's more noise?
Yes, I think there's something there, and I think the Biden administration or the Kamala campaign knows that, and that's why they've been going so hard into pandering to them behind the scenes. They've been having surrogates meet with the leaders of the non-committed movement in that state. They had people go in and meet with the mayor. Kamala Harris went and privately met with that mayor as well that recently endorsed Trump. Again, she's having her surrogates. I'm not sure having them isn't the right word. Some of her surrogates are using more liberal language when it comes to classifying what's going on in the Middle East than the Biden surrogates were at the time before he dropped out. And they're using the word genocide where Biden's people weren't. So there is a little bit of pandering to them, and I think that we've noticed them actively trying to court that vote. So I think they think something's there. I should not move off of Hispanics too quick. I just wanted to jump in there as well. We do see a massive shift in labor work, like labor workers, like not the service industry, not the creative industry, the labor industry where you sell your labor, welders, union jobs, traditionally that have kind of moved away from union. You see a massive shift in people that work in these industries. There was a Bloomberg study that said like welders, there's a good data to say that like 80% of welders vote right wing. And that's something that like, those are big
Male-dominated industries.
Yep, exactly.
All men.
For sure, but there's a lot of like non-white people in those industries as well. And if they shift, you could see a multiple point shift in those demographics. We're going to see, leading me to my final point, Osceola County, Florida. Osceola County is about 2/3 Hispanic. It's about 1/3 Puerto Rican if you're worried about the Madison Square Garden joke. This is probably the best bellwether state to see how Trump is actually doing with Hispanic. In 2012, he did 45% of the vote. In 2016, he took 42%. If he takes that county, that shows drastic improvement with the Hispanic vote, and that shows he probably is going to carry over to other states.
How's he polling in that county right now?
It's really scant to get polling generally in the whole county.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think, like I think it was 2020, you saw some Hispanic counties, like a lot of border counties in Texas where, it's like 80% Hispanic county, and there's literally a 25, 30, 40 point shift away from Trump. And so some people said, oh, well, this shows that there was a big, Hispanics had this big political migration. And even after the election results came out, I don't think I was publicly creating content at the time, but I was talking to my friends and saying, like, I don't think, like, this just isn't true. Like, I mean, it's true that the Hispanic people in those counties shifted away, but those are like more rural living, more suburban living Hispanic people, right? And they're also literally border state Hispanics who might have stronger views about immigration. But it seems like when you disaggregate that and look at Hispanic people that live in urban communities in Texas, those people voted overwhelmingly for Democrats. And you can look at that in 2018 and 2020 as well. So, again, I think I just think it comes down to gender a lot of the time. Like, I would agree that male-dominated industries and like blue-collar workers generally are shifting towards Republicans. But I think that's just because it seems like, generally speaking, men are just shifting towards Republicans, but women are shifting away.
You know what I find interesting here is that
Hold
this
on,
has been a general.
before we go on, Gibbs, I want to interrogate that point. I think that I think it's it's much clearer why women are shifting left. Abortion, right? Roe v. Wade, etc. We could generally see that argument. Why are men, in your opinion, shifting right?
I think it's because over the last 30 years, we've seen a trend of expanded opportunity for women and a trend of stagnating or deflating opportunity for men. You can look at, and a lot of this is draws on educational lines as well, because again, like, educated men seem to be shifting towards Democrats as well. Like, the more educated you are, the more likely you are to vote for Democrats. That's a little bit different on racial lines, but if you were to look at income growth for men over time versus women, you see that women overwhelmingly take the gains of wages. Again, that's in a relative sense, so there's still a wage gap, but of the wage growth that has existed, it's very disproportionately gone to women over the last 30 years. And that's true with educational attainment, positions in professional working, like basically just like the elite of the society. And the mobility of women over time has been much higher than men. And I think that that's what causes a lot of men over time to kind of look towards not necessarily conservative solutions, but I think look towards radical solutions because they have had like sort of a more like radically depressed, last 2 or 3 decades than women have had.
It's real interesting. That's how he frames
that's government's fault. So.
Because it's really the Democrat messaging. That's really what it comes down to.
It's part of it.
Yeah, Michelle Obama literally just got up last week and basically said all men suck. Like, I mean, it's insane. They've been like, before that, it was like, oh, white men. Before they figured out we need to win an election, there was like, all white men are the devil. Like, I mean, like, I can't even remember. The Dems have been pushing this narrative that men suck, white men specifically, until recently. They've been using all these minorities for a while. I feel like they figured this out, that they're just getting used by the Dems to win elections. Because then when it comes push cutting time, hey, guess what? They're not there to help them. And it's crazy because it feels like there was a general sentiment that I keep hearing from the left is any stat or any number that points out the Republicans are doing good or Democrats are changing, it's, oh, that's fake news or it's only applying to radicals, etc. And the framing is so dishonest. Like, it's not only applying to radicals. These are average people that are shifting.
You failed to
because
capture
they're
my point so holistically good.
Crazy lefty strategies and talking points. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not trying to capture
I
anyone
get
at all. I'm just telling the facts.
Well, those aren't the facts of what I said. Again, all that I'm saying is that in times of great inequality or expansion of inequality, we tend to see people in whatever that inequality is, social, economic, geopolitical inequality, we tend to see people favor more radical solutions, right? And so I'm drawing a very clear story in that regard, which is men's
You might be using
lives
slippery language,
really,
but the left has been calling
I'm
everything that goes
using-
pro
I'm-
men radical.
I'm
for a
not using
while
slippery
now.
language.
Well,
I think
let Econoboy defend himself. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Econoboy, please.
I think that lower income men and like less educated men over time have seen their wages like completely stagnate over the last 30 years. And I think that in not only their wages, but also their relative place in society as people, education premiums are going up and more people enter professional work instead of blue collar work, their relative position in society and their incomes have stagnated over time. And I think that that's a much cleaner explanation as to why we see men shifting to the right and shifting towards these more like radical right wing type politics than to say like, oh, a bunch of men saw Michelle Obama say that men should vote for Democrats. And so that's why that we all decided to just say, fuck Democrats. We're going to go vote for goddamn Republicans now. Like, no, I think my narrative makes a lot more sense.
He's right. Democrats did abandon the working class.
Yeah, they hate men. They just repeatedly say it over and over and over, and then they go, "Why are men leaving? Oh, I can't figure it out."
Let me take a shot at this. I think, firstly, there is some truth behind what Gibbs is saying. That the messaging here, I don't think we can just like put our heads in the sand. If all the anti-Semitic protesters were, and they had been doing this for a long time, just replace the word, white men with Jew, essentially, which is what they did in these protests. And then all of a sudden, people started taking notice about how horrific this sort of thought process is. White men specifically have been demonized going on basically since 2014, right? And I think that there is a counter reaction to that. There is a cultural backlash to well, no, we're not monsters. We're actually, we're people. You can't just like hate us in the way that you do, because I think there is a lot of just explicit hate and a desire to see men fall, because if men do poorly, then the gap gets smaller. And of course, that's ultimately all that a lot of people on the left care about. It's just the gap getting smaller, even if it's to the detriment of people. I also think that historically, I mean, you're going to see, because women are more likely to use government services than men are, you're going to see women tend to vote more pro-government service than men generally. And I think that this is becoming maybe more and more apparent as government grows and as government services become more and more, expansive, and they're handing more and more out. You're going to see women to be more interested in that, just because, again, they're just more likely to be the recipient of that aid to begin with. And then I think that also there's, to explain men going to, I guess, more the right wing, there's somewhat related, to both the prior topics, which is, women using more government aid and also, the hatred of men. With the affirmative action and government grants and et cetera, there, especially recently, has been more of a push to allocate that in a sort of a racist or a sexist way, which is essentially like you're only certain development grants in cities, by the way, almost all development grants in cities across the whole country, you're really only eligible if you're a minority, a woman, especially if you're a woman, or a veteran, right? White men who are not veterans tend to not be applicable, not be capable of getting any of these loans just by virtue of them being a white man. And I think that feeling of just like explicit kind of bigotry and discrimination against them is shifting towards I'm going to vote for the party that is not for that, right? And Republicans are more not for that than Democrats are, even though, unfortunately, there is somewhat of a bipartisan approach to that.
You guys both bring up solid points, but I just feel like they're not things that break through to the normie. My buddy who doesn't follow politics asked me what toxic masculinity was like a year ago, and I'm like, is this fucking 2016 again? So like this stuff doesn't break through to the normies. If you're not going out and applying for grants, you'll never know about these things.
Let me explain. Let me answer that. Like, it's not about whether or not they can answer all the questions about the specifics of it, but they feel it, right? They feel people hating them. They feel as though they don't have the opportunities. They feel all
first time.
Just real quick. Lactoid, do you think that's true? That if people who don't exist in these spaces, who don't like come on the Whick show, right? Who are, aren't watching the streamers, aren't tuning in, do they actually feel that way? I
Wait,
don't
wait,
know.
that they are hated as white men? Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
That's-
there's a reason why, like this group,
This
you
is
know,
us real
they
time
wear the
being
hats.
conservatives are as emotional as the women they're trying to.
Okay, hold on.
Let me
Sure,
get-
but let me just like there's when you look at this group of men who are like, there's a reason why they're wearing the anti-woke shirts and the anti-woke hats, and they're and their focus on culture war issues, and this is making up a major part of why they vote, and it's because they're demonized, right? And whether or not they can explain all the details of how they are is irrelevant. The fact that they, first of all, they are being demonized,
They're
but that,
feeling
of course, they feel
I
it,
think-
right?
I think what you're talking about is more of a symptom of what I want to get to, and I think it kind of ties both your points together, addresses a counter boy directly, but also ties in the why as a culture war thing. So I feel as though, again, the Democratic Party has shifted to a party of elitism. They're going after college-educated voters, which tend to turn out to be higher propensity voters in off-year and special elections, which is great for their party. They're targeting smarter, more educated people that have been through academia, and if when you become the party of academia, it's just a cost-benefit analysis. You're going to lose some of the working class. The working class, the lower educated voters have been shifting over to the right wing in this transition of the Democratic Party to be this technocratic elite, which I like in certain ways. To become that, though, you do lose part of the working class. You lose a lot of these men. And it has more to do with who they, and Lactoid's kind of right, who they stand up for to that degree. And when you side with academia, and I'm going to go a little broad here and pull out some things, but you tend to get those people that are radical fucking feminists that do hate white men. So it does pull that into it. And you might not see that, but it does reverberate through other policy. And same thing with like gender issues. Gender is something only in academia. You start getting into polling, 60% of people don't believe it. 75% of people don't want it in sports. Like, it's not a popular thing, but it's extremely popular in academia. And as the Democratic Party becomes this educated party, they do leave the modern person behind, and that's where the men feel left behind in.
Yeah, the word is uppity.
Wait.
Uppity
I
is
just
the
want to ask.
word.
Wait.
Sizzling,
Can we just ask?
sizzling. Go ahead.
What has the Democratic Party done specifically to demonize white men? Because I feel like,
Sizzling.
personally, just another feeling from the conservatives. I'm personally putting out my feeling that it's not a demonization. It's literally just Democrats haven't given special treatment to white men as Republicans have.
Hilarious.
They're giving special
That's-
treatment to
that's
women
funny.
for this period of time.
Can I talk
and
about
then
Michelle
feel-
Obama's thing?
Let
Wait a
Sizzling,
second,
hold
I'm
on,
almost
let
done, I'm almost
Sizzling
done.
finish,
I'm
and
almost
then
done.
you can go, okay? Sizzling,
So
please.
conservatives, for the longest time, have been getting special treatment, or white men have been getting special treatment in the country for 100, 200 years.
Hmm.
The first time, these last 2 decades, women have been getting special treatment. Now conservatives are feeling they can't point to anything real. They're feeling like they are being demonized because they're not getting special treatment like women are. Because women, for the longest time, have not had the same rights as men. That's my feeling, because all of you have been saying they've been demonizing. What specifically has been a demonization of white men?
It was just brought up the Michelle Obama speech where she said almost all of men's concerns can be summed up with rage and bitterness, and then they should put those concerns aside for the more important thing, what the women want.
That was this week, by the way. That was this week.
This week.
Like,
So-
for decades, I've heard from the left about how we need to revise all this history one way. How the cruel white European man is just
Yeah, I'm
evil
asking
man.
for his policy. Like, what policy has
I
been
mean, this has been.
demonization?
Education. Then re-education. Let's start with that. There's one policy right there. I mean, for decades,
Demonization?
for decades.
Let me.
For decades, hold on, I'll let you go. For decades, white men, for specifically, have been like they're the evil enemy in the night. They're the bad guy. And then you could say no, but you're just wrong.
I'll give
And
you
then
policy.
now, we go on, and they've moved it to all men. All men are bad. If you agree with anything manly, anything masculine, that's toxic masculinity, you're bad. And as for the question that was one of y'all asked about the normies, yeah, the normies absolutely do feel this. I talk to random people all the time for work. I talk to the people out at the
They
club.
feel it.
I'm one of the
Yeah,
few people
yes.
here that are not in need of touching grass. In fact, I probably need to touch less grass, right? I'm over here going out and I talk to these people, and everybody I talk to, they'll come to me knowing I do politics, and they complain about how they feel ostracized, especially by the left. And it's I agree with them on all these policies,
They can't
but
point to anything.
they hate
I'll
me.
give you policy.
It's all the time. All the time. We could go down
I
policy.
understand. We all agree.
You're
We
just
all agree.
wrong.
We
I mean,
all
it's
agree
really the word I want to
conservatives
use before in closing here.
feel this way.
It's uppity. Is the Democrats have gotten real uppity, and they sit here and they want to look down on the rest of us
Okay.
common men. That's
Obama's
the
Title
We all
IX
agree
changes.
that conservatives feel this way. Yes.
Here.
Obama's Title IX. I'm not a conservative. Obama's Title IX changes. There's your example.
What about him?
He lowered the standard to just believe women. There were multiple men that have won lawsuits now. I think it's in the multiple hundred. They were kicked out of college for sexual assault, rape, and things like that, where a college tribunal found them guilty based on a preponderance of evidence. Yeah, based on the policy that the Title IX directed. That's what Title IX directed, and that's what the Trump administration changed.
Is not to just get white men locked in jail because why? Because women said so. That's not
It doesn't specifically say white men.
Wait.
I don't want to get.
Let
sidetracked on a Title IX discussion.
Yeah, we don't have to get down, but I think that's a good example. I also brought up 2 examples prior, which is city grants and affirmative action. But I think the way, well, it sort of is, because I think that you betrayed. Hold on.
It's the issue.
Brother. Yes. Let me finish my point here. Hold on. Yeah, lifting other people up at the expense of who in a zero-sum game. There's so many seats available in a university, absolutely. So let me explain this, right? The way you asked the question earlier, I think, betrays the answer. Like, oh, women were like, for how many decades getting pooped on, and now finally, when women are getting like a little bit of special treatment, all of a sudden men like are getting all upset about this. The way that you ask that question, I think, betrays what we're talking about, which is this sort of revenge mentality.
I do want to move
on. There is a revenge
mentality
mentality that like I think exemplifies the woke movement, and a lot of people are voting for Trump because they're opposed to that, and they don't want to be they don't want to be on the business end.
Hold on! I gotta bring this back.
I want to finish my point in one last sentence. They don't want to be on the business end of this discrimination when they weren't the men 20, 30 years ago that were benefiting from anything.
Okay. Do we think that this has a substantive impact? Because the Title IX changes have been recently, this was a recent thing, right? Do we think that things like that impact the race that is coming on Tuesday?
No, I mean, I think
not directly.
Significant impact from this.
I mean, go ahead. I'm sure that there's some of course, I'm sure that there's some portion of men who are very reactive to what Gibbs and Lactoid are talking about. I mean, of course, I know that's the case because there's, many conservative influencers and, people online and people who post about like, oh, this is so evil that the Democrats are doing this stuff and it's persecuting white people. So, of course, that's something that a lot of white men might feel like. But in general, though, I think that we have to ask, like, where does that content come from, or the demand for that content, or like, why is it that people might be susceptible to that type of messaging? I don't think it's because like your city might offer a grant to Black-owned businesses. I think that there's more deep-seated issues at play here, which, to be fair, is a failure of Democratic governments. Like, I think there are solutions to these problems that Democrats have not adopted, but I just don't think it's as it's like when people say Black people commit more crime because of their culture. It's like, well, where does their culture come from? Like, there has to be like a material explanation for that. And obviously that's where liberals will go into the history of slavery and things like that. And I think similarly with white people or white men in general, why have they drifted towards conservatives? Well, men in general have drifted towards conservatives. Why have men in general done that? Well, I think it's because of these more basic but also deep-seated issues of wage stagnation and relative position in society. Of course, I don't think it's right to change your political philosophy because your wife has a college degree and you don't or something. I'm just saying that it seems like in moments where inequality is expanding for groups, the group that's left behind because of that expansion of inequality is going to, oftentimes radically change their politics. Sometimes maybe for the better or the worse. That just seems descriptively to be what happens.
Like the first demonization example is like affirmative action. I don't think it's real. I think it's just a feeling.
You don't think affirmative action is real?
Hold on, we can have
no. I don't think affirmative
another
action.
day.
What other things are not real? What other things are not real? Like
I don't want to
demonization.
Did the shooting actually happen on Trump? Did that actually happen, or are you part of the third that say it doesn't?
Well, is the Earth flat? Is the Holocaust real? What? Okay,
what do you think I just said? Wait. What do you think I just said? Biggs, come on.
You said affirmative action wasn't real just now.
No, I didn't. I did not say that.
Who heard that? Did you hear that? Anybody else hear that?
I did not say that.
It sounded like you said that, but let's give you a chance to clarify. What did you mean?
My clarification is the feeling. There is no demonization happening within affirmative action to white people. There's just a lifting up of other groups. And white people
at the expense
feel
of who?
a demonization from that lifting up.
I'm throwing a flag on the play. We can debate that. I will set it up for you guys to go at it each other on this. This is not the time to debate this topic. We're going to be talking about the Senate. I want to get into the Senate. We've talked about the presidency, right? Who controls the Senate when it comes to like when the next session rolls around, right? Who is going to be in
Democrats.
control? Democrats. Why?
The reason I say Democrats is for all the same reasons that I've already mentioned. I think that the advantage of Democrat Senate in this case is that the polling of
Where do
various
we
Senate
win
races.
seats? Like what's like now it's 50-50. What does it look like? Is it 52, 48?
Listen,
Be
my
specific.
boy, my fellow Texan Gibbs is gonna jump down my throat for saying this, but god damn it, as of today, I say Colin Allred wins Texas. Okay, now, Gibbs, you stay quiet for a second, all right? You just stay quiet. So I think Colin Allred wins Texas. I think Colin Allred wins Texas. But anyway, I think we don't need to win Texas. We just need to maintain our current seats, and I think we do that. I think Sherrod Brown wins in Ohio, and I think that Tester, the polling in Montana seems completely even more ridiculous, where it's like 43-43. It's like, okay, well, this is useless, right? So just who do we think is going to win? I think Tester has deep roots in the state, and I think that Sheehy has scandals that make him look really bad, and I think that probably makes it more likely for Tester to win. And I think Dan Osborne actually has a shockingly good chance of winning Nebraska. I wouldn't predict that personally, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen.
It's one of those dark horse things. Fair enough, right?
Yeah.
That Allred winning Texas,
The reason I say that, okay.
Here. I don't know, but
look, the reason I say that is because in 2018, Ted Cruz almost lost. He only won his race by 2 points, and Beto greatly outperformed his polling even in 2018. That was in a midterm year when turnout was significantly lower in Texas because it was a midterm year, right? I expect, although Republican turnout will be greater, I think directionally all these demographic changes and the fact that it's a presidential election, the fact that Ted Cruz is deeply unpopular, and the fact that the polling shows that it's a tied race, and I think Democrats are overperforming their polling, that leads me to say, optimistically, perhaps it's Cope, but I think I have good reasons to say, God damn it, we're going to have a Democratic senator from the state of Texas for the first time in fucking forever.
Gang.
I want to jump that in there on that.
Be his greatest moment or his greatest shame.
I will see what I want to too.
That's my prediction as of today.
Just to like maybe even go along with it, I think Beto and Allred are very different candidates. I think Beto is much more palatable to Allred's much more palatable to like someone like me. He's like a former Baylor captain. Like, he's got the football, he's got the red blood. However, his policies are pretty far. And the thing is, you mentioned not Trump. You mentioned Cruz. Cruz's unpopularity. It's almost like the Dems' problem, really, with Cruz. He's uppity. He's like been in Washington too long. He's kind of out of touch with the average person, and I think there is some truth to that. I think that he might be at the end of his cycle fairly soon, but I think he's too tied in.
Why vote for an uppity guy like Cruz when you could vote for a goddamn fourth-generation Texan like Colin Allred?
Listen,
Come on,
I'll tell you why, because Allred stands for everything I don't stand for, so it's pretty easy for me not to vote Allred, even though I'd probably rather drink a beer with him than Cruz, if I had to be honest.
Uppity is a racial slur for black women. I'd appreciate it if we stopped using that. Next.
What? No, it's not.
No,
hold on. Okay, we got one prediction only, and I want to hear everyone's thoughts.
Cruz,
hold on. Let me frame this, and then you can go on. Okay. Econoboy has said that we at least keep the seats that we have. We might flip one or two, right? But it's going to be a close race. Probably just going to keep it 50-50. And his bold prediction of Allred winning. Those are what we got on record for Econoboy. I want to hear from Lactoid.
As of today.
Yes, as of today. Fair enough, but this is the final prediction show I'm doing, so we're locking it in. We're going to give it to Lactoid, then we're going to give it to Tyler, and we're going to give it to Gibbs and Sizzling. Lactoid, what's the Senate look like?
Yeah, I think that I'm more sure about this than I am when it comes to the presidency. I think the projections right now have it a 90% chance that the Senate flips over to be Republican. The betting odds are even greater. There's only an 18% chance that Dems get a majority compared to Democrat or Republicans getting a majority. I think it's going to be overwhelmingly the case that Republicans are going to have a good night just in terms of taking back the Senate.
Where do they flip? Do you have any specifics for us? Right? Where do you think that Democrats lose seats?
I don't think they're gonna. I don't think it's gonna. I think the Republicans are going to keep Texas, and then I think Wisconsin. I think Republicans are going to flip it. It's going to be really close, though. It's going to be really close.
Okay. Tyler, thoughts?
All right, so I kind of want to address Econoboy, and it fits in the same thing here with his specific comment. And what we were talking about earlier, my academia versus working class theory. When you see Allred in the debate, he is running away from the transgender issue. He won't talk about the votes that he took on it. In fact, I think he lied about 1, 2, potentially 3 votes.
Nobody watched that debate.
I did.
Well, you're nobody, so.
That being said, it's a trend. Kamala Harris on CNN the other day wouldn't
Conway,
say,
did you watch the debate?
I did.
yeah.
Well, shit. He's a better Texan than I am. I didn't watch that shit.
Well, that being said, Kamala Harris on CNN the other day wouldn't even say she's in favor of gender-affirming care for anybody, adult, kids, anyone. She wouldn't even say, she just said, I'm going to follow the law, which is like a cop-out answer. So when you see Democrats pandering to get the middle, the working class back, they immediately drop these academia points, just like in Texas. I don't think it's going to work because it's kind of like, we just saw you say this for 3.5 years, and now you're like throwing these people under the bus? Like, I don't believe you. So I think that's going to be a big factor in this. Ted Cruz's popularity isn't great, but we saw from Robert O'Rourke being a multi-millionaire that had to change his name, couldn't even take the state. I don't know if Allred's going to be able to. I think what we see are, obviously we're going to see West Virginia flip. It's pretty much set in stone. Let me pull up the Senate map. Ohio, I have a hard time guessing Ohio going to. What we classically see in polling is that sometimes you'll see a senator have a better chance in a state, and then once they get out there, the top of the ticket will carry that senator that was losing in the polls a little harder than we actually see in the polls. So I feel like we're going to see states Trump wins, like Ohio. He's going to carry the red person over the line. So pretty much every state Trump wins, he's going to carry the senator with him.
Fair enough. So what's the specific lookout you're predicting?
I think everyone
58? What are we
Everyone
thinking?
but Kerry Lake in the contested. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin. I don't think he'll win both Michigan and Wisconsin, so whichever one he loses, he probably won't get the senator there. I don't think he's taking Arizona because Kerry Lake is uniquely unpopular in her state, underpolling Trump by almost 10 points. Pretty repulsive as a human being generally, so we might see an actual split ticket there, but generally you don't see split tickets very often.
Okay. Gibbs, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say just the vibes here in Texas, I think Cruz wins. Beto was scary. Like, I remember going out and you would see signs everywhere for Beto. I mean, I still see stickers on people's cars saying I voted for Beto. I haven't seen that with All Red, and albeit that's just a vibes thing. I guess I hadn't been watching it as close as I remember the Beto one being. Yeah, vibes. I'm going to go with Cruz. I mean, I could be wrong. Like I said, I think I personally could stomach All Red a lot easier than I could Beto, right? So we keep Texas. I think Wisconsin. I think Trump gets Michigan. I don't know if the Muslims are gonna swing enough for it. Whatever. I don't know if he gets the Senate there. I feel like that's probably gonna stay. Whatever. Pennsylvania, I can go either way. I think he gets the rest. I think it's a slight Republican edge in the Senate. I think we do well in the House.
Fair enough.
Across the board.
Sizzling, thoughts?
There's just gonna be a lot of. I think it's gonna be a lot of New York stuff with all the big upsets that happened in 2022. They're gonna be trying to sort out. Democrats are gonna try to take back all those districts, but I don't know if they're going to.
We're talking about the Senate specifically.
Oh fuck, shit. I don't really care. I'm be honest. It's like it's gonna be 50-50 basically.
Care.
By
Gotcha. Well,
the way, really quick, I was gonna say here's my trump card. Okay, even if I'm wrong and the fucking Democrats lose a seat, okay, Lisa Murkowski has been quite tepid about remaining a Republican. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised. Let's say it's 51-49 on election night after all the Senate votes are counted. Wouldn't be surprised to see Lisa Murkowski say, "I will be the center of attention for the next 2 years. Thank you. I'm now an independent." And obviously, she might caucus with the Democrats. So anyway, that's my fallback. Even if the Democrats lose a couple Senate seats.
Fair enough. Okay. I haven't given my predictions yet, so I guess I'll jump in the ring here and give you my thoughts. I think that Harris will narrowly take the White House, but I think that the Republicans will keep the House, and I think the Republicans will narrowly take the Senate.
That's fair.
Traditionally, the voting public likes divided government. They like to see the House, the Senate, and the White House at odds. I think, we've had people on my show give this reasoning. Fairy Queen was on the other night, and she gave the reasoning, right, that she's going to vote top of the ticket one way, but the bottom of the ticket the other ways, because she didn't like either party, right? And I think that this is going to carry over into a lot of voters' minds. I think we're going to see a lot of split tickets. We're going to see a lot of people split their vote more than we normally do. I think that when it comes down to it, we will be able to know who wins on how close Florida is. If Florida is 15, 20 points Trump, then that's it, right? I think Trump takes it. If Florida is 5 points or 10 points Trump, then it's a lot closer. If Florida is any closer than 5 points, Harris has probably got it in the bag. I think that's true. I'm using Florida here because they get their votes out fast. Okay, that's the only reason I'm using this as a measuring stick here.
If you think, what do you take about people complaining about how slow the government is going, but honestly, most people like it at the end of the day. Like how, it seems most people complain all the time about how slow the government is, but no one wants a fast government.
Wait. You think most people like that the government is? Like, I don't think
you'll find any poll answer saying that they like how slow the government moves. But I think everyone appreciates and likes the stability of a slow-moving government.
I really disagree with this.
What part?
I think it's.
Hold on, before we move on to this next argument, let me just compound what Whick was saying. Not just Florida, Whick, Pasco County, Florida. Pasco County, Florida, especially in 2016, but also in 2020, was an early predictor of what was going to happen in Michigan and Wisconsin. What you find in Pasco County, which is in the north end of Florida, is you have a lot of retirees from the Rust Belt. And when Pasco County in 2012, Obama won it with 52%, you saw Hillary only take it with 42%, and then you'd see Trump swing it back with a much tighter margin, take it by 54%. It was an indicator of how he was going to do in the Rust Belt. Same as 2020. He lost 3 points in Pasco. He lost 3 points in the Rust Belt. Almost direct one-to-one trending in how that place votes. So if you keep an eye on Pasco County, it could tell you exactly both how Michigan and Wisconsin are going to end up.
Fair enough. Pasco County. Lock it in, boys. I think when it comes to the House, again, I just think that Republicans are gonna retain their advantage there. It might be even closer, right? We might actually pick up a seat or two, but I don't. We might lose it to it. It's a coin toss. This is the hard part about this election, right? And I keep saying this, it's razor close. It's not going to be a blowout. If it is a blowout either way, I will be shocked. Every indicator I see shows a very tight race, a very close race, and so many people are very unsure about which ways the winds are blowing. There's been so much uncertainty in this race, what with the Biden dropout and all these changes that are being made, and whether that uncertainty favors the Democrats or the Republicans, I just can't say. Man, I guess last prediction, right? Last prediction, last kind of subject I want to go over. We could talk about the slow government, divided government another day. I don't have anything prepared for that right now, and I'd have to think about it more. My last question, no matter who wins, do we think that there are going to be substantive, no, let me not use the word substantive. Do we think there's going to be a quantitative amount of accusations of cheating, fraud, putting the thumb on the scales, right? What do we do about that when it happens, right? What happened? Like, again, Trump loses, he does the fraud allegations again. He does the fake voter allegations again. He does all that shit again. How should we respond as a country? What should we do?
Can I jump in here first? Because
Go ahead.
I got a real unpopular take. Nothing. We do absolutely nothing. In 2016, the entire party apparatus of the Democratic Party denied Trump's legitimacy of election, even if at some points they said, oh yeah, we conceded. If they said they conceded and then turned around and said it for the opposite for 4 years, then they were lying. That being said, nothing happened. It's to the point where people are denying that a majority of Democrat voters thought that Russia hacked into the Democratic machines and put fake votes into the election. In 2018, it was 67% of the Democratic Party that thought that, and we're pretending like it never happened. We're pretending like there was never a DNC lawsuit against Donald Trump for colluding with Russia. They got thrown out of court when the Mueller investigation said there was no collusion. We're pretending like all these things didn't happen and just saying it was bad for Trump. It wasn't. The system held for Trump. The system held when Democrats do it. The system held when people denied George Bush did anything. The system is stronger than one individual president. We have enough checks and balances in place. It's not good. I don't endorse election denial, but It's not nearly the big deal it's been blown up to be, and we can see that in issue polling. Nobody's even putting it past like issue number 8.
Do you agree that if like a couple people in like let's say like Trump's district, what was it? Fuck. Trump's attorney general agrees with him that he should be able to fire all the DOJ. What happens?
I agree with him that he's able to fire the whole DOJ as well. That's
But we're talking
happened?
about if Trump loses, so he wouldn't have the power to do that.
Or either side loses, right?
No. I'm trying to get at his point that they like everything is always fine all the time. I'm trying to get at that it was just like literally the DOJ that stopped our democracy from stopping. Like.
Well, hold on. Throughout history, our presidents have come in and just like got rid of like organizations and like things.
Yeah.
That's all. There used to be a whole reason when they got elected,
normal,
they would
yeah.
literally put all their people in. Yeah, that was like a normal thing.
Every-
So like
It
you're
is a
arguing
normal
against
thing.
Yeah, you're arguing against like history and how the
Well, I don't-
American system has
I don't
worked
think
for
I don't think
the
the
entirety of
DOJ has
its
ever been
existence.
removed.
And
When
the
has the DOJ
entire-
been like destroyed?
This is also different than the question, which is like, what happens if there's allegations of voter fraud? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean,
about
Oh, I
if
know.
the
I
person
think
who
most sides
wins,
are
it's
gonna-
like, what are they
I think
going to
most
do to
sides are gonna
DOJ?
try.
Hold on, I'm asking
I'm
the
just
question
responding to his
just for some
claim that-
clarification for you all, because I did ask it in a very weird way, and then my brain's a little
I
mush
thought it was
right
pretty
now.
straightforward.
Right?
It was
Um,
straightforward. It was just he made a claim in his answer that like everything will always be fine. And I was
Well,
just
I don't
wanted,
think
like,
he was
to-
saying everything will always be fine about everything. He's talking about specifically about like voter fraud.
Rainbows, unicorns,
I mean,
cake and punch.
I think
Kind
our
of boys, go ahead.
institutions will certainly survive a second round of Trump election fraud claims, especially because he's not the president. Thank
Yeah, the
fucking
fraud
God.
claims,
But I was going to say that I think that there is a difference though between Democrats thinking that Russia, I guess, switched votes on voting machines and the nature of the Republican Party today. I think that the big difference is that Democrats are not seemingly stubbornly against the idea that an opposition could win. Like it seems like when you poll Republicans, they basically just take it to be the case that if Republicans lose, well, there must have been voter fraud. Like I think I saw a poll from Republicans that said that, if the Democrat wins, I expect it's because of voter fraud. And I think that that's probably a line that's too far to let's say a healthy democratic process. Like in general, if a Republican wins, and look, Trump, I was one of these people when Trump won in 2016. I said that fucking sucks, but hopefully we'll survive. And same thing in 2020. I think that Democrats will generally still have faith in our fundamental voting process if Trump ends up winning in 2024. But Republicans, unfortunately, it seems like a great majority of Republicans, seem to very stubbornly believe that basically Republicans didn't win, or that Democrats didn't win in 2020, and that they would expect that Democrats won't really win in 2024 if they do end up winning. And that's a very sort of scary thing.
The stage was getting set for that in 2020. Trump had done nothing to stop Putin from hacking this election as well, and blah, blah. We heard all those narratives.
And also on top of that, remember 2016, right? Not my president. I mean, that was, in fact, I remember like pro-Trump people would even like respond to that with, "Yes, he is your president," like as the meme. I agree. Like going back and looking over it, like claims of an
That's a
illegitimate
misunderstanding of what
presidency.
that was.
Well, no, at the time,
Because like what people
there
were
were
saying with
riots on
that
the streets
is
the day of Trump's
agreeing
election.
that he is the president. They're not saying that he's not the legitimate. Like he's not.
They were
like,
calling him
he's thinking
illegitimate.
No,
Yeah, I mean,
you're not calling him
Raskin
They
already
were
said
calling
that
him illegitimate.
Him and the Dems in the House wouldn't even
No.
accept
This is
him
like
as
saying.
president
This is like saying not my like.
No.
any kind of
I know which way. I know
political-
you're trying to twist it into being like, well, he's not a president
No,
for me.
yeah,
But that is not what happened, right? They were like, and I look back on this,
moments,
like they were absolutely calling him
they
an
made
illegitimate
things.
president. They were saying like he's not like the rightful president. I mean, this was
Did they say there was voter fraud?
There was the talk. They said the Russians interfered with the election.
I've
seen the. Hold
Black
on. Hey,
Did the Russians interfere?
brother, take a second. I was the poll or the statistic that was referenced before by Tyler specifically talked about how a large number of Democrats believed that the Russians interfered with the election, and not just we're talking about like made some polls or made some advertisements on Facebook, but specifically did things like hack into the mainframe, add votes, like interfere with things. There's a reason why you have Hillary Clinton and you have a number of other major Democratic figures calling Trump a illegitimate president. That specific
You
term
see-
was used, and I can show you
I mean,
how
we
many
have modern
fucking
too.
times he was specifically called a illegitimate president. How there were riots when he was elected. People forget all
How
that.
many of those
people
people
forget the riots.
asked?
Well, Raskin
Was
already
the
said in the
election
House they won't
legitimate?
accept it if he wins.
How many of those people said the vote was illegitimate?
They called Trump an illegitimate president.
How many of those people said the vote was illegitimate?
Specifically, the vote, none. They said the election was.
They said the election. They again. The specific,
How many people said that?
Why is that
said the
relevant?
vote
Explain why this is
was
different than calling Trump an illegitimate
illegitimate.
president. Explain that.
Because these people are saying that the election process was held incorrectly off of no evidence.
Well, then hold on. Then
That is
why?
not-
Then why were they
We
calling
have
Trump an
evidence.
illegitimate
We have
president?
evidence, though.
Wait,
We have
Gibbs.
some evidence.
Because
Hold on a second. Why were they calling him
Can
an
I answer?
illegitimate president? Explain that.
because they do not like him.
So he's He's an illegitimate president because they just don't like him.
Yes.
Go, come the
Yes.
fuck on. This is
That's
real time
not-
gaslighting about what actually happened back in
Wait,
2016.
Like, this is super easy. So in their statements for he's an illegitimate president, what was the evidence that was given?
The Russian interference. That's what Hillary Clinton said.
No.
Yes. Do you want me to show you her saying that?
Can you show some tweets? No. Can you show some tweets?
I can show you a video of her saying this. She was interviewed.
She says multiple things. In fairness, she said the Russians, but she also said James Comey interfered with the election as well.
She said, yeah. Well, like, can we all just be on like in the same world? How many of Trump's campaign managers were sent to jail for Russian interference?
Oh, here we go.
Again,
Yeah.
it's all the goalpost is always some new
Can we
thing.
live in the same world? Can we
It's
just
always
can
this is a
There's always something else to point to.
we stop
Always
trying
something else.
Stop
Yeah, what if I
Live
told
in
you
the same
Kim
world.
Paxton
Answer the
sued
question.
the Biden
Stop
administration
yelling.
for
Yeah, no,
$1
yeah, we
million?
answer the question and then it's something else. Yeah.
Let me
how
ask.
many-
Stop,
how many
all of you,
of
all of you,
million?
all of you,
I'd
all
like
of
to
you,
respond to
all
Wick's
of you,
original
all of you,
question
all of you,
personally.
all of you are going to shut up, and I'm going to ask a question, and then you can go back and forth, and you can have your fun. Okay? Because I want clarity here at what Sizzling is saying, and I want to make sure that we all understand what it is he or is not claiming. Do you think, and are you claiming, Sizzling,
Yeah,
that the
okay.
2016 election was illegitimate?
No, I am not.
Okay, then fair enough, right?
I'm
Doesn't matter
saying-
how many
I'm
people were
saying that
arrested.
most
I think we
people-
move on, right?
I'm saying most people had very legitimate claims to say that there was some really, really questionable shit that happened during the election. And it was proven with the Mueller report that people were sent to jail for the election. How many?
I just think I think it's fair to say that each party's base is susceptible to what we might call like the propaganda of each of its leaders, right? That like Democrats probably think that Russia played too big of a role in the 2016 election than they actually did. Obviously, they did play a role. Obviously, people did go to jail for that. But did it actually make a difference in the outcome? That's very difficult to say. I mean, it was a very close election, so maybe I'm not really sure. But like, the point is, though, is that I think that these things are different in kinds just because we didn't see like an institutional effort from the Democrats to overturn what was ultimately just the result of the election. That's what we did see out of Republicans. That's what we did see demanded by the Republican base. And that's what, unfortunately, I'm glad, let's just say, that Trump is not actually the president, because if he loses, of course, he'll have substantially less power to do potentially authoritarian things like mobilize the military, the DOJ, or like all these other institutions to try and support his fraudulent electoral scheme. That's, I think, the big difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. The Democrats did ultimately, the institutional Democrats did accept the results of the election, but the Republicans very much did not accept the results of that election, and they tried to scheme to overthrow the election as well.
To Biden's credit, I think Biden accepted the election a lot more than other top figures in the Democratic Party. To answer the
hold on. Can we not
We have to
equivocate?
live in
The
the same world.
Republicans engaged in a conspiracy to overturn the Democratic results of the election. The Democrats did
Okay.
not do that.
But that's
Can we just agree that there's a difference?
No, hold on.
That's
Yeah,
not
of
the
course,
question.
of course, there's going to be a difference in all these things, right?
What is the difference?
I hold on. I think I'm answering Econoboy. I think there's going to be a difference in all these things. There's going to be a difference when it comes to, yes, there was nothing specifically like what happened in January 6th among the Democrats in 2016. But there was absolutely electoral denialism. There were efforts to convince the electoral voters to switch their votes to Hillary Clinton in order to save the country. There were riots that were at the time protesting and burning shit down because Trump won the election. There was pressure on the election, again, pressure on the electoral voters. Of course, all this was happening. if we're talking about voter denialism, do I think that's going to happen this coming election? I do. My question is, do I think the Dems are going to do it with all the shit they were talking about this last election about how that's horrible? I think they're still going to do it. I think if Trump wins, you're still going to see some large percentage. I mean, we're
Hold on,
already
what
seeing.
does that look like? Hold on, let's be specific here, Lactoid. Do you think that if Trump wins, that the Democrats are going to try and overturn that election?
In what way? I think there's
I
going to
mean-
be riots. I think there will be riots to try to pressure members of the Electoral College
Do you
to
think
vote for
that Joe
Kamala
Biden
Harris.
and Kamala
I
Harris
do
will
not
engage in
think-
a
I-
conspiracy
I'm
to
answering-
overturn
hey,
the election?
I'm answering the question. Do I think that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are going to do anything similar to the electoral, like the slates of alternative electors? No,
Slates of
I don't.
alternative electors.
I
that
don't.
were
I
fraudulently
don't.
sent to the... Okay, so you
Yes,
don't. Fair
I
enough.
don't, and I don't
Why
want to
would
turn
they
this
not?
into. I mean,
No,
we
why
can-
would they?
I don't want
Yeah,
to turn
why
this
would they
into
not do
like a
that?
January 6th conversation, but I do think
Why?
that there is
No,
going to be.
wait, Electroid.
I do
They,
think there
they
is.
changed the law.
I do think that there
Why
is going to
Why
be.
should they not?
They
try
changed the
something?
law already, so it doesn't read the same way, so they can't. So
Well, arguably
No,
under
no, no,
Eastman's
but why should they
theory,
not
the
try
law wouldn't
something
matter because
extra
it'd be
legal?
contradicted by the 12th Amendment. But regardless,
No. Why should they not try to do something else extra legal?
I
they
they
can
shouldn't.
try. They shouldn't, I guess, but they can
Why
try.
It'd be
shouldn't
bad.
they?
It'd be bad.
Why shouldn't they?
I mean, it'd be just as bad as if Trump did it, wouldn't it?
Why was it bad that Trump did that?
Because it goes against what the election results actually were.
No, it goes against our founding principles. This is the problem I have with conservatives. Honestly, they don't care about the Constitution.
Yeah, okay, I'm not a conservative, dude, so all these straw man attacks against your ad hom don't work against me.
Well, no, you have a conservative mind to say
Not
that. You don't have to be conservative.
Yeah, that's
You
okay.
can just have these
Anyways.
thought processes that are conservative.
But you know
Anyways,
what's
Hold on, let me jump back into this because the Russia investigation, we found out that there was a little bit of Russian interference in the election, but we found out most of the rumors between Trump and Russia collusion were cooked up in a basement by a guy named Igor Danchenko, who
If
was a
Lactoid
convicted.
doesn't want to talk about January 6th, I don't want to talk about goddamn Russiagate.
I just want to answer
Can we
this.
agree?
Well,
Yeah,
no, but this is more relevant because look, nobody here is denying.
More relevant.
No, here's why it's
Oh
relevant.
my
Let me explain why it's
God,
relevant.
please.
Let me explain.
Investigation to
Yeah,
this.
Here's why it's more relevant because everyone here agrees there's electoral denialism on the right. Of course, nobody's denying that. But there seems to be this short-term memory loss about when Democrats did it in 2016 and when they're probably going to do it again this coming election. Mark my words. Mark my words.
You said-
When
you
they
said-
lose,
Hold on, I want to
you
get in
will
on
see
this.
electoral
and I got $10
denialism.
I gotta
Mark
read.
my words.
Hold on. I want to get in on this, and I got $10 I got to read. $10 from Artemis Fowl to say the Democrats didn't conspire to overthrow Trump by using a dossier that was known to be paid for by Hillary Clinton or for a foreign spy and was used to illegally obtain FISA warrants.
Thank you. Named Igor Danchenko.
No, here's my take on this, right? There are election denialists on the left. There were some in 2004. There's been some every election, honestly, right? On all sides. Whatever side loses, there is a portion of the other side who says, no, the other side cheated. But
That should
there
be
is a
expected.
substantive difference between a portion of your base thinking a thing and putting together a false slate of electors and going through and creating a conspiracy to move forward and basically perform fraud in order to throw out votes and change the results.
Wick, I just want to point out.
There's fundamentally,
They're just repeating themselves at this
There's
point.
fundamentally
I
a
know.
difference because it bears repeating. Yes, I am
Yes, it's
repeating
different.
myself because
But
it
is it
bears
worse?
repeating.
It's not
I got
worse
something for
than
that. I got
Crossfire
an answer for that.
Hurricane.
Wait.
Crossfire Hurricane was worse than Trump's slate of electors.
Wait,
Hold on,
Tyler,
I want to talk about the response to what Wick
You
just said.
disagree with Lactoid because Lactoid already said and gave the game up that these things are not like and kind. He knows they're not like and kind.
I'm also
He knows-
saying they're
he
not.
knows- Wait a second. He said it already they're not like and kind. But then after saying that, Econoboy asked him a couple questions, and then he starts comparing things that he already knows are not like and kind
Yes.
to
You can,
each other.
a comparison
It's completely
requires two
just
things that are not the same.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
comparison
He keeps going.
That's
he
what-
keeps
that's what
going,
a comparison
obviously,
means.
Yes. Trump did try
No,
to
but
do
if-
a conspiracy against the Constitution.
If
Get in
they're
there
different
before I
in kind,
filibuster
then the comparison doesn't really make much.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, both of them are electoral denialism. That's the comparison.
No, you already.
Yeah,
we can
hold on,
disagree as to the specifics.
Hold on. I want to jump in here.
It's not that we disagree, because I actually don't disagree on the specifics. I just disagree to the extremity of how much this is a problem within each party. Like, it's clearly, It's so fucking clearly a worse problem with both of the Republican base and also Republican politicians.
I disagree.
No, hold on. What's really
Polling was
interesting?
worse for Democrats, and more of the leadership in the Democratic Party said Trump was illegitimate. The only person in the leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton.
That's a great point. I must have missed where the Democrats conspire to overturn the election results in an illegal
look what they're doing. This is crazy.
They did. I'm not saying
That's
they didn't.
why I'm saying there's a difference in extremity.
Yes, and Crossfire Hurricane was worse.
Guys, I think it's legitimate. I think it's legit. Guys, okay, Sizzling, just shut the fuck up for a second. Okay, I think it's legitimate to say. I think it's very legitimate to say one side tried a coup and the other didn't.
Yes.
That seems like a big difference between the two.
Yeah, BLM riots. One actually had an insurrection.
There we go. BLM, Russiagate. What's the next one?
I want to talk about the more problem I have with this, right? Is that I've got
to get $20 by reading this super chat, so we're gonna do that first. $20 from Artemis Fowl.
Sorry, Gib.
I actually think an outgoing administration conspiring with a political party candidate to carry out clandestine investigations in order to cripple a duly elected president and try to get him impeached. That's the
look. Wick should thank me every time I'm on. Artemis donates like $50.
but was it an alternate slate of electors, though? I mean, that's the only that's the only thing we can ever talk about. We can't talk about anything else. Was it that though? No, I guess it wasn't that. All right, well,
and I am agreeing with you that election denialism from the left is a problem and it should be dealt with.
But how can you make the comparisons, Wick? How can you? Because of January 6th, don't you know this, Wick? January 6th.
Yes,
how can you ever talk about anything bad the Democrats do? January 6th.
Set up.
Wick.
Hold on. Did you not see my whole spiel before you guys all came on?
No, I was in the shower.
Remember
I was watching.
I don't watch your stream, Wick.
I know no one does, right?
I do.
You know who you're talking to? I just spent an hour castigating people on the left for lying about that Liz Cheney comment that Trump made. I oppose shit like that. So please don't come to me on my
No, wait. I'm going to come to you a little bit. I'm going to come to you a little bit because you engage in the exact same thing that was just done by Econoboy and Sizzler. Was the whole over and over again? We kept saying yes. We've talked about like January 6th, and we agree with that. That it was absolutely like electoral denialism. But then here is like evidence that we're bringing forward as like this happened in 2016 on a question about. Is electoral denialism going to happen in 2024? That was the point of the question. The point of the question was not to say it like in every single specific is January 6th comparable. Which way is it comparable here? And then when we bring up an example electoral denialism that happened from the left in 2016, but you can't do that because is this anything like the electoral scheme?
You. You're not.
Well, to be fair, they were talking over me, so I mean they were kind of stopping me a little bit.
I've recognized your criticism this entire time by saying, like, yeah, obviously it's the case that there's anytime like someone loses an election, there's going to be some margin of people that deny it, or there's going to be like, in the case of Russiagate, there's going to be like probably an outsized influence as that how that narrative actually materializes into the opinions of people. But again, I think that I've always said that that's a fair criticism of like the Democratic Party messaging and Democrats in general. But what's not fair is to compare the two things because one is of a clearly much higher degree of extremity than the other. Like Trump is much more fervent of an electoral. Okay, here's a good question. Would you say that compared to Hillary, Biden, Kamala, would you say that Trump, the three leaders of the Democratic Party over the last few years compared to Trump, would you say that these three people engage in the same level of electoral denialism as Trump?
Yes, I absolutely would.
Not compared to Biden. No.
Hold on.
Just totally different reality.
Hold on. I'm going to tell you what. This is a big thing. I've been really just freaking out here. So what's interesting to me is this kind of narrative that y'all done. Anything that y'all start here and y'all call it alt facts. Or whatever y'all wanted to label it. And what's interesting is I'll see something like this election in Connecticut where the mayor, they have on video of the mayor literally having people out there ballot stuffing on video, giving each other high fives. Cool. We got them doing it there in Connecticut, right? Okay, interesting. Then we have Ken Paxton. He finds 1 million people that shouldn't even be registered to vote in Texas. And then he opens up an investigation into LULAC, arrests a whole bunch of heads of the LULAC organization, who's the Mexican rights organization. It's basically equivalent to the NAACP. Arrest a bunch of, because what are they doing? They're over here literally registering undocumented people to vote. He caught them. They got caught. And then when people go, hey, look, there's evidence of election problems here. Y'all go, no, there's not. And then not only that, we're afraid Trump's going to get elected because he's going to clear out the DOJ. And the only thing that tells me is maybe they all are afraid of actually having an investigation of this shit because there is something sneaky under the rug. And y'all like, no. That's conspiracy.
Yeah, there's no mass voter fraud. Did they
find 1 million ineligible voters? Indicates to me there's something there.
There's a specific term that I think you're missing, Biggs. what is it called? It's like election. It would be the election changing amount, whatever that amount is.
Yeah, I mean, it was so election changing. They're doing a new primary in Connecticut.
If there is no amount of like voter
Outcome
fraud that will
determinative
change an
voter fraud is
election,
the phrase
that is
you're
not
looking
an
for.
issue that we need to make new laws for.
Oh well, I mean, I
Outcome
guess the
determinative
judge in
voter
Connecticut
fraud.
thought it was big enough because now they're having a whole new primary. So clearly, it is an issue. Like,
Yeah,
and
no,
if you
like,
get a
there are-
microcosm
if we find
examples,
issues-
then I'm sure
if we
that there's a
find
lot
issues-
bigger
They
examples.
didn't respect the result of the last primary, Gibbs.
Wait, Big.
I know. In fact, they put Biden won the
Big,
primary. What do they do?
Big.
They put Kamala in there.
Did you see how when that was found out, it was corrected?
The Dems don't care about your rights. That's
No, did you see how when that was found out, it was corrected, Gibbs?
and what?
Right?
The Biden?
Right?
How was the
The
Biden one
process
corrected?
worked.
Y'all cut his
The
head off and put
process
somebody new in there.
If we found voter fraud because it's not too hard to find, and we corrected it, and we
We
caught a
didn't
new
correct it
election.
though. We haven't corrected it.
Oh
We're
my
There's a
God.
new election.
re-litigating.
Look, here's my
Because
prediction.
we're not even
If Trump,
investigating it.
here's my prediction. If Trump loses, I'm looking into the future right now. I can see Gibbs and 45% of Republicans just immediately parroting every single talking point they can find about voter fraud and disinformation. Gibbs,
Hold on.
this is not true.
I've
that
never
this is
claimed.
happening.
Hold on. I've never claimed that
Gibbs,
Trump
you
lost because of
sent
voter
me
fraud.
information saying that Tim Walz molested a boy.
Hey,
And
that's
it
what they.
turned out
That's what the
that
rumor was. That was the rumor.
information
I
was
just asked him.
entirely
Hold on.
false and
Hold on.
Wow,
made
you're
up.
spreading rumors.
Uncloud your
I
mind,
asked
Gibbs.
you if you had seen this.
Meditate.
It was phrased as a question. I was part of that group
Hold
chat.
Yeah, I posted this a lot of places. I said, "Hey, have y'all seen this?"
I'm just
trying to
asking
get
questions.
conversations. I send you lots
Just
of stuff.
asking
Going,
questions.
have you seen the news? Like, just asking. What do you think about this? Is there any?
Just
If it's got
asking, man.
teeth,
Just
I literally
asking.
asked, if this has got teeth, do you think it's going to cost election? Like, or
I
if
asked
it
you
does
if
have
it's
teeth?
got teeth, and you said yes. It
I said it
does.
could. It seemed like it at the
Oh my
time.
God, Gibbs.
Okay, so the original question here was
News
just about voter denial. It wasn't about the follow-up action. It wasn't
I mean,
about
the
cross
fact that-
No, just real quick. Fair enough. Fair enough. No, stop. Gibbs, that's fair. Sometimes we get it wrong. News changes. Did you
Right.
ever formally come out and correct the record?
Yeah, I said because that other guy came out. This is what was my exact quote on the last time I was asked about it. Was there was another guy that came out and said he had talked to the witness that black insurrectionist had spoke to, and he said that person was supposed to file something. I said at the time, if there was no filing within a week, then it sounds like bullshit. There's been no filing, so it sounds like bullshit. I mean, that's pretty
wait.
simple. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I was like on life support at that point. I don't know
this is
how much
my-
more clear I could be on that.
This is my huge issue with conservatives. They do not change their level of conviction to the level of evidence is provided.
That's your
So,
fourth
Gibbs,
huge issue
Gibbs,
with conservatives.
Gibbs, you told Whick it has teeth. Why did you
Then
say
I
it has
just said it because at the time there was documents. There was apparently this
What
guy was
documents?
filing. Listen, hold on. We're not going to dive
Wait,
down
is that
into
evidence
what's.
or anything,
Hold on.
ever?
We're not going to dive into the specifics.
No,
if you
no,
really
no.
want to get
This
this
is
argument,
really important.
hold on.
Conservative.
Are you going to let me
You
answer?
don't-
Are you going to let me answer? You let me answer?
go
All
for
right,
it.
cool.
Go for
Thanks. Yeah, the point was there was stuff that indicated it might have teeth, and guess what? I'll tell you what else has teeth. Ken Paxton arrested all these people that were
can we
literally
stop?
saying, "Hey,
Stick to one
we're
topic.
getting illegal individuals to vote."
One
That's
topic.
voter fraud. Guess what?
One
We got
topic,
an example
one topic,
that
one
they
topic.
literally redid
Okay,
the election
we're back to
in
the thing.
Connecticut.
I
It's
interrupted
voter
you at
fraud.
the perfect
And it
time,
looks
Jeremy,
like it's
because now you're
time
talking about
to maybe
Ken
expand
Paxton.
that,
I
and
can
maybe
feel it.
DOJ
One's
needs to
in
be changed
chat.
out.
Started this
One's
My
in
conversation
future
before.
chat.
prediction
One's in chat.
materializing.
Hold on. This is a prediction.
But,
All
the
made
point was,
predictions.
I didn't say it was
No,
voter fraud. I just find it
I'm gonna-
interesting we can't
I'm
even
gonna give
investigate.
I'm gonna give a prediction to my a prediction opportunity to my chat right now.
I'm not going to
You're
say
in
it's voter
chat
fraud.
and you're watching
loses.
this. Do you think that after the election, if Trump loses, will Gibbs claim it's because of voter fraud?
Oh, I won't
Hit
do
one
that.
in chat if you think Gibbs will claim that. Hit
I don't
2 in
think so.
chat
It's-
if you
Wait,
think
it depends on the evidence,
I
right?
love Gibbs.
He'll
Well,
just
love
ask
Gibbs.
questions.
maybe evidence later comes out.
Because
but yeah,
because
I'm
my
not gonna
opinion
say that.
conforms with the evidence. If the evidence shows voter fraud, then we should all agree there's voter fraud, right?
So
I'll
that's
say
what-
this.
that's
My
what-
initial thought, if Trump loses, is not going to
Okay.
be, oh, it was
I
voter fraud.
see
I'll
a
tell you
three
that.
of
If there's
one
voter
and
fraud,
one
but it
two,
favors
a
Democrats, then
single two.
it's
If the
not
wait, the
single
evidence
two.
shows it. If the evidence
I
shows
mean,
it, you guys are coming to conclusions before you've seen the evidence. That's the big
I'm
problem I
literally
have with
telling them
liberals.
right
That's
now-
the
hold
big
on.
problem I have with
See, what's
liberals. Okay,
crazy is I'm even telling them what I'm
your
doing.
conclusions
If
don't
Trump
match the
loses-
You're
evidence.
actually
Trump
predicting.
loses, like I'm going to say it's not voter fraud, and then I'm going to go, hey, it would have to be pretty substantial evidence. I'm not even saying it's voter fraud now. He lost the last one. I'm just saying
Listening,
there's some
they-
reason for Republicans to
So
think
to-
that.
This is
So-
right. I live in an urban county. I've already voted 3 times. They don't give a shit down here.
I got my
Yeah, it's crazy.
grandparents.
Yeah, they don't know.
Vote early, vote often, right?
Let me amend
Amen.
my answer that I gave that kicked all of this off. So I'm saying do nothing about just the allegations that there was something nefarious. If someone says, oh, there was voter suppression because of the voter roll purge or whatever, look into it, investigate it, and then we make conclusions at the finishing of the investigation That's how we found out Stacey Abrams was lying when she said that the Georgia election was stolen from her, and she was punished for it in Georgia in 2022 when she ran. So just the allegation that something nefarious went on, we ignore it. Now, if somebody does try something,
Apparently we don't.
as Econo Boy said, Trump's not in power, so he doesn't really have the levers of power that he had before. But if there is something nefarious Trump does, we look at it, we say, okay, he committed a crime, and we let the system go after him in the way it does. Because he will not be the president at the time. Nothing of it will be official presidential act. All of it will be subject to the
Well, what's
law.
interesting is if he gets the levels of power, right? They're gonna just they're all afraid now when you go on any like national news show that Trump, if he gets in charge, he's gonna do use the DOJ to attack them, which is interesting because that's what they've been doing to him this whole time. So why would they be afraid that he's gonna shine the spotlight on them?
You're
Well,
saying
let's
the
see,
answer to
because
that.
he tried to sue CNN for the big lie to the tune of $400 million. He tried to sue Bill Maher for calling him a
Can we talk about
orangutan.
Dominion?
Why would Donald Trump?
He's
Why would
currently
Donald Trump? Why would they think he's going to use the courts against him?
Maybe because they've been
currently
doing
suing Stephanopoulos too.
He's
Or
done
could because
so
they've
over
been
and
using it
over
against him,
again.
or could they have used it against him the whole
He's
time?
known as being extremely litigious.
Mm.
Litigious. Is that the word?
He's
Litigious.
suing.
He's known for this. He's been known for that for his entire fucking life.
He's
This isn't
Stephanopoulos
new.
right now.
It's true. he is.
$10 from Artemis Fowl, and then we're gonna get to closing statements because I know people got to go. They got other
Another
shit to
10
do
from
tonight,
Artemis.
right? $10. Yeah, shout out to Artemis for funding my stream tonight. I really appreciate you, buddy. I invited him on, but I guess he was busy.
Can I just say one thing? Artemis has done more to help elect Democrats
Yep.
than anybody else on this
Yep.
fucking panel.
Artemis always not available when I'm on. Interesting. Curious.
$10 from Artemis Fowl. To be clear, at least 4 Pennsylvania counties have made press announcements about fraudulent voter registration requests.
Oh, they have.
Thousands
I'm
of
sure.
them. Is this election special for some reason? Question mark.
Yeah. No, I'm sure this won't be the same as all the other 10,000 accusations of voter fraud that turn out to not be true and just be a conspiracy. I'm sure this is the one, Artemis. You've got us. There's going to be massive voter fraud, and Kamala will win because of it, and the Democrats will sweep it under the rug. No, obviously that's not true, Artemis. Stop being a fucking dumbass. All right.
That guy that
There's not going to be
drove his
massive voter fraud.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a feisty prediction panel. I've really enjoyed this one. If you enjoy this content, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Right? Oh, hold on, Artemis Fowl, you'll be on in a second. Do you want to come on right now? I will. Do you guys? I don't
It's
know.
the least you can do, Wick.
Yeah, I don't know if you have time, Econo Boy. Do you have a few minutes?
I
I have to jump on Dylan's panel in 45 minutes.
Oh,
I have to
45
leave.
minutes?
I have to leave
I'm
at like
good
8.
until
So
then.
I gotta go right now, Wick. Y'all be good.
Okay, so how about this? We're gonna do closing statements now, and Artemis Fowl can come on after closing statements, and we can have a little tete-a-tete, if you will, a little back and forth. Sound good, gang? If you can stay, great. If you can't, I understand. We're gonna give it first to Sizzling, and then we're gonna end with Lactoid. That's the order we're gonna go in. We're just gonna go in a little loop here. Give us again, reiterate your predictions for each. Be concise. Tell people who you are. Closing thoughts on the race. Sizzling, you're up.
Hey, it's Kamala. I'm on Sizzling Wall, Twitter. It's just going to be pretty tough on the Senate. 50-50, basically. But have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Econo Boy.
Yeah, I'm open to literally all of my predictions being wrong. I wouldn't bet like some incredible amount of money on the idea that Kamala wins all 7 swing states or Colin Allred wins Texas. I would just say my high confidence prediction is just that Kamala is going to win, and I think it's just because of all the reasons that I said. I think that women are going to come out and vote disproportionately to men like they always do, but it'll be more disproportionately. I think demographic transformation seems to favor the Democrats a lot. I think the polls are being overcorrected, and even in the context of being overcorrected, they're still substantially, they're basically all 50-50 at this point. And if it's 50-50 on election day, yeah, I mean, I think that the Democrats are probably going to win. They're probably going to do quite well. But my exact map, I wouldn't be surprised if some of that ends up being wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if Colin Everett doesn't win Texas. But those are my predictions right now.
Okay. Brave, strong predictions. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you, buddy. Gibbs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Admiral Gibbs. You can find me everywhere as Admiral Gibbs. We're gonna be doing the hippy dippy thing like we were just talking about in about 15 minutes. Closing thoughts here. Yeah, I think that the Republicans do well. I don't know if it's clean sweep, but I think we do well in Wisconsin. I think that Cruz stays strong in Texas. Or just stick it to him here. I think in general, The Republicans are going to win the House. I think they're going to maybe get a slight lead in the Senate. The election comes down to it. It's really anybody's ballgame. I'm predicting Trump wins a few swing states that maybe nobody even sees coming, or some of these neck and neck ones. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll tell you what. What's really interesting to me is that I have told y'all definitively, Leah, I'm not going to say it's a, whatever, somebody clip that election fraud, unless, it's down the line. This would have to be months and months down the line, where plenty has been proven that it's election fraud. I don't even think there's election fraud in the last election to the degree that would have cost an election. So, if he loses, it's not going to be because of that. I'm going to think I picked the wrong information to read into. The tea leaves I picked were bad. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
But all right, thanks for having me.
no, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you. Check him out, gang. Tyler, please.
I've been on the last couple of these, so it's pretty. Nothing's changed. Issue polling last time I was on went from like 8 to 10 points in economy favor of Kamala, and it shifted already back to 20 for Trump. So all the fundamentals are telling me Trump's going to win. All the data's telling me Trump's going to win. I have no reason to question that. Usually, RCP in particular, but polling aggregates are the most accurate measure of what's going to happen in the country. I see no reason to question, and if I'm wrong, I'm comfortable being wrong, trusting the polls. So. That all being said, I just want to clarify, I am not condoning Trump's 2020 actions. I just think Crossfire Hurricane was worse. That's the big argument from before. And nobody's yelling over me. I get to actually say that. Trump's actions were disgusting on 2020. And in a perfect world, I wouldn't vote for him, but sorry, I already did.
Well, check him out, gang. Tyler, Average Debate Enjoyer on Twitter. Give him a follow. Last but certainly not least, before we get to the after show, I guess, Lactoid, thoughts?
Yeah, I think what was just said I really agree with. Specifically, I'm comfortable being wrong, as long as I'm following the polls, right? If you're following the fundamentals, if you're following the evidence, I think that if you're trying to be wrong, I mean, hey, you worked with the information that you got. I think it's a very evidentiary sort of mindset to say, look, based on the evidence we have now, it seems like Trump's going to win, and I think he is going to win. I think not only do the fundamentals show that, I think the betting odds show that, and I think that the overall air and just aura of the whole election sort of shows that. I know I've come out on Twitter supporting Donald Trump. He has got my official endorsement this election. I've never voted for Trump before. I didn't vote for him in 2020. I didn't vote for him in 2016. But I think that Kamala represents a threat to our republic that is greater than that of Trump, and I think that we have to take that into consideration here when it comes to our vote. So, although you could argue, well, Lactoid might be biased and want Trump to win, I try not to let any kind of sort of biases bleed into my predictions. And if tomorrow Kamala starts to flip all the polls and the betting averages, then I'll become doomer and I'll be dooming all over Twitter. But yeah. Anyway, if you like what I had to say, you could find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks.
Check him out, gang. Thank you for being here. We'll get you next time. I think you're wrong about the Trump endorsement, but we've had this debate before. Okay. You guys can stay if you'd like. You don't have to. I understand if you have places to be. But Artemis Fowl had some words, and Econoboy had some words for Artemis Fowl. And Artemis Fowl is here. So, Econoboy, you have some thoughts you want to share?
What did Artemis say? I don't know
Oh,
what he said.
there are two things. One, Econoboy, I don't fear you. I just don't think your opinions are respectable. In
You
any
fear
way.
me, Artemis.
Okay. But
That's what I
I
think.
sent you, Conaboy, the link. These are actual press announcements made by the election boards of the specific counties.
Yes,
Coming out and saying they have found, not that they are looking for,
I'm sure.
because they had 2,500 voter registration requests, not ballots, requests, dumped on the last day. It's the only reason they found this information out, is because it was a last-ditch effort from somebody to submit fraudulent voter registration requests. They found at least 60% of them don't match anybody and are like, they said, what was it? Multiple looked like they were signed by the same person. So you made it out as if there was no evidence of such things. I chalk it up to your smug ignorance on almost every topic you ever come across. That's why I had to come on here to correct the record.
I see.
Now you can go ahead.
Well, again, never claimed that there was literally zero election fraud. There's just not any sort of significant election fraud that exists.
I mean, this is
Artemis,
pretty
and the
significant
evidence.
because there are
No, it's
multiple
not.
counties in Pennsylvania reporting the same thing.
This is not significant. It will make no difference in the outcome of the election, and I will bet you $100 that that's the case.
Okay, well, hold on. To be clear,
Do you want to bet $100
hold on,
that your Redis is printing money
on,
if you're right?
hold on.
Okay.
How would we even come to judge this information?
Yeah, what's the definition
Sorry,
of
say again?
significant here? Is what
Yeah,
he's asking.
how would we even judge whether or not it did? But there's no way to do that.
Well, if you presume that we just cannot find out when voter fraud happens, I mean, your
Do
article
we have
proves that
there's
not
a
to be the
pretty
case.
easy
but-
way. Is there a
How?
specific number? Like you said, 60%, but do we have like total?
They
Like
said
a
out
raw
of
numbers. Like, are we talking
2,500,
1,000?
they said out of the 2,500, at least 1,600 of them look fraud.
2,500. That's a good number.
It's a lot of
So
people.
I think that one of the ways we can
In one
determine
county.
whether outcome determinative voter fraud was, if this was significant, is whether or not the vote in Pennsylvania is a bigger difference than 2,500 votes.
No.
Be
So that's
wise?
sorry. To be clear, that's one county. The another county next door, Luzerne or whatever county, also
Yeah, what's
reported the
total in
same.
all of them, please.
Yeah. So right now they've expanded the issue to four other counties. No, four total counties. So far, and they're looking into it. But it looks like this operation has been going back so far as June of this year, and they've traced it to a canvassing operation, and now they have to go back through and look at all of the canvassing voter registration requests from this group because it's a huge issue now.
Which group was it?
Fuck, I'd have to go pull up. I think I put
Well,
it
no,
to
I'm
the
asking you
article.
because I haven't been able to find it, and I really want to know which organization it was.
Yeah.
Because that answers the question. Well, kind of.
The voter request forms are traced back to a company calling itself Field Plus Media Corp. Corp spelled like corpse, but Korps. A subsidiary of Field Corps. The company is based in Arizona, but was working out of Lancaster County. That's literally in the article I linked you.
Okay, and which way did they lean?
Well, you want to take a bet? Okay, so the company's website lists a number of Democratic campaigns as clients, including Biden-Harris, Arizona Senate Mark Kelly, and Arizona Democrats, and calls the number listed went unreturned when the website was taken down.
Boom. It's over,
So-
kind of boy. Explain.
He got me.
So,
I don't-
but
again,
hold on.
I have no. I'm not convinced by this just because I'm not under the impression
So-
that like improper voter registrations are never submitted, or mail-in ballots are fraudulently submitted, or sometimes ballots are filled out incorrectly, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. And
But my
I
issue
know
here-
conservatives have a problem. Well, because I'm not done speaking really quick. And so
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not under any impression that never happens, right? But the argument is always twofold. It's always one. We have a system that seems very robust to catch these cases. And by the way, in the article that you linked, Artemis, that's what the election officials in those counties said was, hey, our systems worked. We caught these things.
That's the
not
ones
a problem.
they caught.
Now, well, listen, but if we're going to take a non-falsifiable position that there is voter fraud, but we can never find it, then okay, I guess that's a position you
That's
can
not the
have. But
position.
then, no, I understand that that's not the position. So we must be of the position that we can find this type of voter fraud, which is to say, hey, we'll find out. I will bet you, Artemis, $100 that we do not find any amount of voter fraud that makes a difference in the outcome of the election.
Okay, so here I want to point this out to you.
He will not take this bet. By the he will he will not take this bet because he knows it's bullshit what he's saying.
No. When I list this out, everybody's gonna understand why your statement is retarded. So, if the voter fraud was just unperceivable, whatever, the county saying that we caught it and it's not happening, we caught it this time, everything's working out fine. Why are they having to now go back through to June for voter registration requests to now look at this fucking canvassing group?
They're probably doing an investigation. I'm not doubting that there's an investigation taking place.
So there's
they're saying that the investigation's working. By the way, I'm still waiting to hear. Just take my bet. If you think this is a thing, take
So
the
now
bet
let's think
already.
about this. So we're talking about 60% of this one drop from this day. We haven't even gone through the entire county back to June yet, so we don't know what the full total is for one county. If I remember correctly, the 2020
want to take the
campaign
bet?
shut up. So so in 2020, multiple states came down to what, 10,000 votes, even less, 0.3% of the population. If we're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 fraudulent voting requests per county. If per county, it could be just like maybe one, like 3 or 4 counties. It didn't really, but we're looking at a significant amount that could swing an election.
Artemis,
But it's unprovable
bet
because
you
your standard is impossible to
$100.
meet.
Wait, Econoboy, can I explain why that's an unfair bet?
Yeah, sure. Why is it an unfair bet? I mean, it might be
Fowl,
unfair.
The reason why it's unfair is I think Artemis Fowl could hold the position. Look, there could be voter fraud, or there is voter fraud, but we just can't prove it because we're asking for some base level like protections that would catch it. That for some reason Democrats are opposed to, right? Like voter ID when it comes to Pennsylvania specifically, like preventing people from out of the country.
Well, I've already said though that if we are of the position that massive voter fraud or some substantial voter fraud does in fact exist, but we cannot find out that it is happening. Okay, I mean that's not falsifiable. Apparently, it's just always the case that there's some massive level of voter fraud.
But it is fixable.
Well,
but I don't agree.
Requiring proof of citizenship to vote. That was on the ballot just recently.
That's a ridiculous position, and it shouldn't be a thing. And I can explain why.
It's pretty reasonable, in my opinion, but okay.
It's a ridiculous thing because it's just a way for Republicans to dissuade people from voting. And the reason I say that, if you let me explain, is because people do not carry around a fucking birth certificate or proof of citizenship when they go into the polls. They might carry around substantially different forms of ID. For instance, in Texas, we do have a voter ID law, but it says like you can have a driver's license or a state ID or a utility. You have there's 20 different forms of ID that you can bring into a polling location. I think voter ID in some regards probably makes some sense if you wanted to do that. I don't think it depresses turnout that much, but the citizenship thing is just a complete red herring because guess what? It's never been a thing that non-citizens voting has been a huge problem. It's
that we know of. That we know of. That we know of.
I'm gonna kill myself on
this is part of the problem. You could put the citizenship identifier on the driver's license. Boom, problem solved.
It recently came out in the news that the Biden-Harris administration was trying to get amnesty secretly for 1 million people here illegally.
Yeah, that's not really a secret thing. They've been trying to do that for fucking
anything, Tyler.
And that would make them eligible voters.
So I'm just going to link this. So in Michigan, they arrested a Chinese national for voting in. Shut up. There's a Chinese national that voted in this election for the president, and that illegal ballot will count because there's no way to retrieve it.
Of course,
sure.
Yeah.
And if
no, it's not. Of course, hold on, stop. Hold on, wait, hold on. Econoboy, why is your smug fucking condescending voice keep doing this shit?
Am I so smug? Look, if you're so confident, bet me I'll give you 10 to 1 odds.
So here's the issue, right?
I can just $1,000 average debate enjoyer. Really appreciate you. Anyway.
Yeah. So here's my issue.
You've got $50 to throw out Whick, you won't bet me 100? Okay.
Because you're not worth it. But on the other hand,
I'm not worth it. No, it's because you're bullshitting, and you know that you're wrong.
No.
I will come
this is a rigged bet. This is a rigged bet.
It is a rigged bet, which is why.
It's not.
There, so.
Hold on, I've already bet Dev a 10 to 1 odds on fucking who's going to win this election. I offered up 2,000 and Dev offered up 200.
Well, if you're so confident in your claim, bet
because you're not worth it, Econoboy. That's why I keep
really quick. You bet Dev 10 to 1 that Trump would win.
Hold on. Econoboy, I could just give you a fucking $100 right now. It doesn't mean anything to me. You know that, right?
Damn.
Don't give money. Give me money.
He's rich.
No. Econoboy, go ahead. Throw me your fucking Streamlabs. I'll just give you $100 right now for you to shut the fuck
Artemis,
up.
I don't
He's
want
a Democratic
your money.
donor.
I want you
disguised
to be
as a conservative.
I want you to be confident in what you're saying.
I am confident. That's the issue, is that I'm confident that you don't understand that you're making a rigged bet because there's no way to prove that information to you.
Okay, well then that's fair. Then your position is that there is substantial voter fraud, but there's just no way to find out whether or not it's happening. Now, despite the fact you've linked things that you presume are evidence of voter fraud.
Why do you?
So can we find the voter fraud, or can we not find the voter fraud?
So here's the issue, right?
All right, here's the issue.
Okay, this year there's such a microscope onto this fucking election that everybody is launching premature lawsuits every time something shifts that looks odd. And we are catching all of these voter fraud issues. That never happened in 2020 because the mantra in 2020 was voter fraud doesn't happen, and everybody just took that for granted.
Artemis, is there a way to catch voter fraud or not? Because you've just said, well, there is voter fraud happening now, but we're catching it.
Preemptively, there is.
Okay, so after the votes are cast, there's
There's no way
nothing we can do at that
because
point.
you get hit with the idea of
Okay.
no standing.
Okay, yeah, I mean, apparently we can't make a bet because you think there's no way to catch voter fraud after votes are actually cast.
No.
That's
So
a completely ridiculous position.
Hold on. It is a ridiculous position because you're fabricating a position that I don't
That
have.
sounds like what you just said, though.
No,
What's your position then? Can we catch voter fraud after the votes are tallied or not?
No, especially in Michigan.
Okay, so that is your
they
position.
tell-
That's what I just said.
No. So, oh god,
Artemis,
Oh.
Artemis, relay out your position. Maybe this will help, right?
So the
Artemis,
issue is
clear. Yeah.
just with Pennsylvania alone, with the fraudulent ballot request already caught, we understand that there's enough to have flipped a couple of states in the last election.
You're comparing dominoes to a jet airplane. These
No,
things
it's not.
just don't make any sense. together.
It's an
You're saying
Arizona
that- you're
canvassing
saying-
group.
You're saying that there were an amount of fraudulent registrations in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So that means there must be enough fraudulent registrations to flip totally unrelated states across the country. These are not reasonable things to compare, Artemis. Okay.
Okay,
The
so
margin-
my issue with this statement is that we're talking about an Arizona canvassing group doing canvassing in Pennsylvania, and so magically they would never do the same thing in their home state for whatever reason you're going to come up with. Not only that, but a hidden camera confession by a Georgia canvasser talking about what he did illegally during the 2020 election came out from Steven Crowder just last week.
Stephen Crowder, the great investigative journalist that he is.
Yes, the poisoning the well tactic that you love to do, boy.
Look, I
understand.
Sure, I'm sure that the mainstream
admitting to
media just
himself
won't report.
committing a federal crime on camera means nothing to you because it is
of course, no. I
inconvenient.
am sure there will be a movie made in 10 years about how the brave Stephen Crowder uncovered massive voter fraud, and that's why Trump won his second term after we recounted all the votes and got rid of all the fraudulent votes. This is not going to happen.
How
you
much
guys
fraud
have been
do you
saying
have at your house to
for
construct all of these?
you guys have been saying for 4 years that there was massive voter fraud in 2020. That we can uncover it or we can't uncover it, whichever position you end up holding. It's not true. I will bet anyone who wants to bet. I will bet there will not be significant voter fraud that changes the outcome of this election. Okay, it just we have a good system for counting and legitimately counting votes. Let's say. I mean, yes, Artemis. Yes, our democracy and our democratic institutions are fundamentally sound. We do not have a massive problem with voter fraud. If you want to see massive problems with voter fraud, you can go to other countries. You can go to Venezuela. You can go to other African democratic countries, but you cannot find.
Wait.
Do you have
any evidence? Do you have any evidence of voter fraud in the last Venezuelan election?
Yeah, there's substantial evidence of voter fraud in the last Venezuelan election.
Where's the evidence?
Okay, how about the fact that the results are a perfectly rounded number, right?
How
about the fact that when you exit polls,
that could happen, couldn't it?
Oh, of course it could happen. You know, you can compare exit polls with what the actual results were. You can talk about all these different.
Are you a noticer, Econo boy? Are you?
No. He's right. It is like a perfect 3-digit for sure. I've seen the numbers.
Sure,
but again, that could happen naturally. That's not evidence of voter fraud, is it?
No, I'm understanding what you're saying, Lactoid. Okay, I'm not saying that you cannot. I'm saying the opposite. You can very much investigate and uncover voter fraud where it exists. But we've done that, and guess what? We've never uncovered significant amounts of voter fraud. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay. But do we have evidence? Like, do we know that the vote was fraudulent in Venezuela?
I think that there's reason to say that their vote was fraudulent in Venezuela. Yes.
Because it's the perfect 3-digit rounding.
Independent canvassers, the perfect 3-digit rounding, the exit polls being completely misaligned, the fact that after he won the election, the opposition had to flee in fear for their fucking life. I mean, these are all things that we would say, yeah, this seems like a fraudulent election. At the very least, let's say it seems like there's much more reason to think that there was fraud in Venezuela than to ever think that there's massive fraud in this country. Okay, it just does not exist on a massive scale. And Artemis can link in article after article. Oh, there was one guy in Michigan who got arrested for fraudulently casting a vote. Oh, fuck me!
Not just fraudulently casting. It has to count because there's no way to retrieve it from the system under Michigan law. It has to be counted.
Well, okay, sure. Let's just say that this one vote, we can't account for it. We can't account for this one vote.
So
okay.
my issue being is that you're still trying to state that system is fine and safe because we're only talking about one person, but if we ask, okay, well, what if a organized, dedicated group to create fake voter registrations decides to cast those ballots, and there's no way to trace them back, and they must be counted under Michigan law? How are we supposed to deal with that?
I don't think that that's going to happen. If we do deal with that, my understanding is that many election officials across the counties in Michigan and across the state of Michigan have ways of reconciling the flow of ballots in a way that would eliminate substantial.
That's what the article is for. Is that Michigan can't pull that back? It has to be counted, even though they know.
For instance, in Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, when he was talking to Trump's team, when he was saying, "Oh my goodness, there's so much fraud in Georgia," Brad Raffensperger did all these investigations, and what he did find was that there were some examples of people who had like out-of-state registrations, or they were non-citizens.
Raffensperger is currently ducking a Senate investigation for non-testifying.
I know that you're just so desperate to change the subject here. Okay,
no. I'm talking about the thing you're talking about. Raffensperger lied about what he did.
I'm sure it's all a conspiracy. All these investigations, all these eyeballs on it. There's just no way.
You can make that condescending fucking tone because your smug ignorance is allowing you to do it.
It's only Senate Republicans who have subpoena power that possibly know the truth and are trying to uncover it. It's not the fucking thousands of different officials in Georgia in a decentralized, federalized election process.
In the Fulton County, right? The one that is currently under complete investigation for corruption.
Artemis, your position is not falsifiable. Okay,
it is falsifiable because they're under investigation.
Can we discover fraud after the votes happen? Can we discover election fraud after the votes happen? You answered no to that twice. Do you want to answer no again?
Oh my God. So my question would be, what state are we talking about? Because there are mechanisms in some states that don't exist in Michigan.
You're saying in Michigan we can't discover voter fraud after the votes are counted. Are there any other states?
All right. I don't know. Is there?
All right. Sure. As I said before on this panel, if voter fraud exists, I'm sure.
I don't know.
They have no. So Pennsylvania specifically has no voter ID requirement, and the worst part about Pennsylvania.
Yes, it does. Actually, that's not true.
Pennsylvania, you don't. Go ahead. Explain.
I'm a Pennsylvania resident. I can pull up the laws for you right now. I just checked. You have to have an ID if it's your first time voting in your district.
Okay, and if you're doing vote by mail, do you need that ID? I think it's not. You just need a corresponding information. You don't need anything. I don't think it's a
they were
ID
doing early
requirement.
voting and people were filling it out by mail, if it was their first time voting in the thing, yes, you did.
I don't think so. That's the whole reason why the article.
Bring up the.
I think that's the whole reason why the article exists, is because of they didn't catch it when the canvassers were doing it back in June. That's the whole reason why they had to stop and go back and look at all of the requests. Because if an ID is required, they would have been able to catch everything early.
No, this is for registrations. These weren't for actual ballots cast.
Okay,
registration.
That's not what it's saying.
May or may not.
So what I'm seeing here is that generally you don't need an ID to vote in Pennsylvania. However, if you're going to a new polling place, you will.
Yes, if it's your first time in the polling place.
At that particular polling place when you're voting. But Artemis is saying that this wouldn't apply to mail-in ballots.
Correct, because you're not going to a polling place to vote. You're doing it by mail. It's an entirely different system.
In early voting, at least, right? And I have a problem with Pennsylvania's early voting. Did you know that the early voting in Pennsylvania ended early?
Correct, I saw that. It was the Republicans that had to go out and sue them.
That fucked me. Yes, I tried to go vote on Halloween.
Actually, it's been it's extended. It's been extended.
That's because of the Democrats doing voter fraud. They needed the extra days to do all the voter fraud.
Just to be clear, I'm looking right here. If you don't have a photo ID, you can use one of the following, as long as it has your name and address.
That is the same way it is in Texas.
Firearm permit, current utility bill, current bank statement, paycheck.
Residency.
Yeah. Yes. Pretty much all those things in Texas as well.
Yeah, paycheck usually.
Okay, I don't mean to be a fuck. Couldn't you just fake a paycheck?
Correct. You can.
You can fake an ID.
The issue is that the ID
you can
number.
Fake an ID. Have you never heard of fake IDs before?
No, you can.
Yeah, you can, but the issue is
that
it's
possible.
The ID tracking software in the government is usually linked together. It's really easy to catch a fake ID when you're putting in the code for the ID.
No, have you never had to? I've been in states where you have to show ID to vote. You know the tracking software they use? They have a list, right? A list of names, and then you
Uh-huh.
sign next to your name and you present ID. They don't scan your ID. There's no fucking weird system to check if it's legit,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's true, and you're right. People could fake an ID. I just think that it's easier to fake a paycheck than it is to fake an ID because with a paycheck, all you got to do is like print out a document that says, "Hey, this is you paid me."
Yeah, there's no system which to look up and see whether that was a legitimate paycheck, just somebody that existed.
Yeah. So I look. I see what you're saying. That like there is some idea in Pennsylvania of some kind of like ID at some point. Doesn't seem to
Yes,
be
you
as
need
expansive
to,
as
you need
I.
ID.
But nowhere.
Well, you
but
don't
it's
need
not-
it. If you don't have it, you can do other things.
If you've
use other
already
things.
voted, it's fine, right?
Or,
Yeah,
or,
right.
or
You've
if you
already
don't have
voted
a
in that
ID and you want to
district,
like you want to use your paycheck, you can do that
Yeah.
too.
But
But I
so we
guess
can-
yeah, I guess
by mail, there's nothing like that.
and apparently by mail also. I haven't verified that, but Artemis is saying that. And
Correct.
then I also the other thing that's pretty fucked up about Pennsylvania, and it's already too late for people to take advantage of this, which is why I'm gonna like this is crazy. You can, if you're out of the country, you can vote in a Pennsylvania election. And all you have to do is basically sign, hey, yes, I attest that I was a resident of Pennsylvania.
Well, I think those votes have to be counted somewhere, right? I mean, like
Yeah,
out of
they're mailed
overseas
in.
military can. Well, like I don't
Are
like
you
the
talking
electoral
absentee
distribution of
ballots?
like overseas
I'm not sure of
absentee ballots.
Pennsylvania's laws and absentee ballots. To be clear with you, I can't even. I can't.
Like they
Well,
have
so-
to be
so
accounted
here's the
for in the
idea.
electoral college somehow, right?
Right,
Like
well-
if you're
well, the
like if you're like stationed in Germany and you're in the U.S. military, they're going to be like, okay, well, do we count this military vote as like where do we place it? Do we place it in Texas where you last lived or where you
Right.
like I don't know. You have to do that somehow.
Right. Well, exactly. And here's the problem, right? Theoretically, again, I'm not contributing to electoral fraud because it's too late to do this, and I think the loophole should be figured out. We should figure out how to close it. But theoretically, you could have a situation where, let's say, a bunch of people who wanted to vote in a swing state, they could take a vacation outside of the country, send a ballot from wherever they were staying, and then claim to have residency in Pennsylvania.
Didn't Andrew Yang try to tell everybody to move temporarily to Georgia to vote in that election?
Based, incredibly based.
And then Georgia was like, we will imprison you for doing this if you try.
Well, there's always a question of how you technically count someone's residency. Like college students, I think it depends on the state as to
it's
how
a
that
really
works.
bad one. Like the Nebraska
but
district, that whatever that one is.
It's not clear that there's a correct answer in this regard. Like if you're, I don't know, like let's say you're a PhD student who lives in Texas like 10 months out of the year, and you've been doing that for the last 4 years, and because the election is in the fall semester, like I think it's fine to count your vote in Texas. That doesn't seem totally insane to me.
No, the fix
well,
is
here-
easy. The fix is easy. You just require, if you're voting out of the country, you require some sort of proof of residence in the state that you're voting in, like or proof of past residence.
Well, here, let me tell you this, Econo Boy. See if you agree or not. Most people, after they graduate the college that they are going to, usually don't stay in that college. Usually, they move back home and go to work either there or go somewhere else. They don't usually stay in the college town or the state of which they did college.
Well, we wouldn't think about this if it was any other group. Like, okay, if I'm like an oil man who works in North Dakota 6 months out of the year, and then the other 6 months I live somewhere else, like I take temporary housing while I'm in North Dakota, and then I live 6 months in Florida or something like that. Like, if that guy, to me, just like morally speaking, just thinking about the full implications of everything, I don't know if I have a strong preference as to whether or not this person has to be considered a Floridian resident or a North Dakotan resident for the purposes of their voting. Obviously, because of our stupid-ass election system, it deeply matters which state you actually vote in. But that's a flaw of the Electoral College, not because there's some necessarily correct way to count residencies.
Right here, I'll give you this. If there was no Electoral College, I would agree that it wouldn't matter. But since we do have it, I don't like the idea of people from out of state going to school for only 4 years. Voting in like memorandums or ballot measures to decide the fate of a state for the next dozen, 20, 30 years going on. They shouldn't have that ability to affect a
but that's
community.
Not how you vote.
They have to
today
own
affect
property
future
in the
generations.
state they're voting in. Problem solved.
Oh my god, that would be such a fucking
Problem
so
solved.
rich,
They have an
we
invested
go.
interest.
so rich
I
people
guess
would be
the-
able
the
to.
landed elite.
People who rent apartments will never vote.
As
to go to the-
remember what
ladies and-
Sizzler said?
Ladies and gentlemen,
The
ladies and
founding
gentlemen.
fathers intended this to be the way, okay? The founding fathers intended, all right?
Founding fathers also wrote slavery into the Constitution, so Fuck 'em.
Whatever.
Here's the
Ignore that
deal.
part.
That's true.
Here's the deal.
And they-
Thank you, everyone, for attending this after session of the Wick stream. We will not have streaming over the weekend. However, on Monday, I'm going to be giving my final argument on why I think that you should vote Harris, vote Democrat down ballot in this election. And then on Tuesday, we will be having wall-to-wall, back-to-back, all day and all night coverage of
Mhm.
the election and the results live.
Yeah.
So
My
tune
coverage
in.
will be better on my stream for those
nice.
listening.
Okay. Well,
I'll be
I mean, you can always
debating.
hop by mine, and I can hop on yours, and we can cross-pollinate. But we'll
Of
find out.
course.
But anyway, for now, we're gonna raid out. You're still gonna be streaming. Are you streaming on Twitch, Econo Boy?
No, no, no. I'll be on Hippy Dippy if anybody wants to watch
Okay.
me talk about whatever they're
Lacquid,
talking
are you
about.
still gonna be streaming after this?
I mean, I'm gonna send it over to Gibbs, but he's in Hippy Dippy, so you can send it to me, and then I can send it to Gibbs.
Okay. If I'm not gonna send it to you, let's see. I'll have to send it to Stardust.
You bitch.
Yeah, got him.
Women's rights.
Okay.
All
And I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great day. I love you all. Wait, bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye-bye.
That was fun.
I didn't want to say it, but I voted Trump at the top of the ticket, but I pretty much voted blue down it. I split ticket real hard.
Wow.
That's fine.
I
It
think a lot of
depends.
people- hold on. I think a lot of people are actually going to split ticket. I think that's
Yeah.
not going to be a.
I
That's
think
not, that's gonna
Michigan
be
has-
more often than you'd think.
I think in Michigan they're voting against Kamala Harris and then voting blue down the rest of it and a lot of the areas.
I really like Raphael Warnock. I just do. I met him. Cool fucking guy. Great ads. I just like him.
Also, Wick,
Yes.
I told you Walls was a bad choice.
I
Well, look,
said
don't
the same thing.
disagree. I think
Okay.
Shapiro was a better choice.
A better
I agree
choice.
with you.
Because they need to lock in Pennsylvania. And the only thing that is any indication that Kamala has a chance are these ridiculous Ipsos, Sierra, or Sienna, and whatever the other stupid poll is that had Kamala up
Shapiro
on
said
9.
no.
State. As someone who lives in the state, even with a gun to my head, I wouldn't have no idea how to tell you which way this is going. Like, there's people like you'll go down a street, it'll be wall to wall Trump signs, and you'll turn the corner, and it's wall to wall Waltz, or
Which
Walz
is-
and Harris, right?
So
And there's
I like the
I
odds.
can't give you a I can't give you
So
an accurate
close. The polls are so close.
I wouldn't say Walz is the mistake. I'd say Harris was the mistake. If that was Warren, this election would be over.
That
already.
was not a mistake by Biden. He wanted to send a message saying, "If you can't have me, nobody gets it."
If it was Warren, I guarantee she'd be up 10 points right now. She'd be crushing.
Warren?
Yeah,
Elizabeth,
because she can talk. Kamala Harris is retarded.
she is, but the issue is I don't think Warren would be it because then Trump and gang would just make her
I
another
don't
Hillary
think Warren
Clinton.
was
Yeah.
a pick.
That's the issue. There was no good choice. That's why she
no,
was.
Shapiro was a great choice. Hold on, no, there
Shapiro would have
wasn't.
been a better choice.
Shapiro.
No,
We
maybe. The
yeah.
issue is you don't want to risk Shapiro in an election year with Trump, who's resurging. Like if you watch his favorability is going up and the Democratic Party's favorability going down, you don't want to risk that.
Trump's
Because-
ceiling right now, 49. He's right.
Yeah. So you don't want to risk it. So Shapiro would be a good contender for next election because you just have to be up against fucking Vance. And I'm assuming he'll probably beat Vance if he was going up against him.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I honestly don't know. I wouldn't take any bets, right? I don't have enough money to throw around to bet.
Also,
any money on what's going to
Econoboy's a fucking retard. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I like Econoboy. Being
I like everything he argues about is from ignorance and how he thinks the world works, and not about how it actually works.
Out of his group of people that he hangs out with, he is a goddamn saint compared to the rest of them. So
Yeah,
I know,
I'll
that's
take-
true. That's true. He is like by magnitudes more reasonable.
Also,
than-
I'm gonna be debating Short Fat Otaku tomorrow.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, on the whole Jan 6 thing.
I liked his video that he put out. I thought it was very.
I tell you what, it was a waste of a video.
I've never seen
Because
someone.
it asks and answers a question that nobody cares about because they don't care. Oh, sorry, they didn't ask or don't know that he tried to do a thing. People are asking, was he justified in attempting that thing, which was never answered. It was glossed over.
We disagree, but I still love you, buddy. And
But no, the video might be good. It's a good quality video. It's just like for convincing people people aren't going to sit through a 4-hour video for that.
Maybe not, but
Yep.
well, I'll talk to you guys later. I love you all.
Mhm.
Fun weekend and happy November.
Stay up.
Lactoid.
Yeah, what's up? I got to bounce too. But how
Yeah,
you doing?
yeah. Where's everybody going? Because I have Gibbs's like Discord, but I don't see Hippy Dippy anywhere.
Well, he's streaming on Twitch, and he's on Hippy Dippy right now.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll go looking for that then.
Yeah, no, you should give him support. It's a big show, and we got some good people on it. So
Nice. I'll stop by.
good shit.
Yep.
All right, catch you later.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, shit, Feder, thank you again for the additional bits. And also, Average Debate Enjoyer, I don't know if you're still listening, but I thank you in chat. But thank you again for the subs. It's awesome. Super cool. Really appreciate it. No, it's good shit all around. No, it was a good conversation today. It's just we're nearing the end here of the electoral cycle. I think once the election's over, people are going to be a lot more reasonable, just in terms of their political takes and just not being hateful, as vitriolically hateful as they can be. But we obviously, I have endorsed Donald Trump for this election, primarily because of the threat that Kamala Harris poses, I think, to America. And how her election and how her presidency would look. I think that we have an opportunity here to prevent that from happening, and so let's do what we can do to to vote and make sure that doesn't happen. So, kind of the schedule here. What we're looking at is I'm going to be doing some IRL election stuff because I live in a swing state. Over the weekend. So I'm going to be limited on how I can stream, obviously, because that's important too. And I think, frankly, that's a good way of making an actual impact realistically in terms of voters. I think that, streaming does that a little bit and tweets do that a little bit probably, but not nearly to the extent of, on the ground work on the election. So, but starting Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday for sure, we're going to be doing a lot of streaming. Monday, obviously, we're going to be doing election streaming, and then we have the Reverie, most likely. It's probably going to happen. And then Tuesday, obviously, we're going to be streaming basically the whole day. I'm going to be just telling people to get out and vote. I'm going to be voting, obviously. For those of you who haven't voted yet, please remember Tuesday, voting's happening. And then Wednesday, we're going to be doing a little bit of a post-mortem sort of analysis of the election and, how I thought that, what the initial numbers are looking like. And Tuesday, obviously, we're going to be up real late, right? Because those numbers come in over time. And, we're probably going to be streaming until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. We're likely going to be doing some kind of stream with Gibbs and perhaps some other conservative characters as well, and perhaps we'll bring on some non-conservative characters, or I might join some non-conservative characters panels, and we might do some stuff with them as well. But there'll be content, of course, all throughout the election. This is the most important season for us political streamers, and for people interested in politics generally. I think it's obviously a really important time. Anyway, for those of you who gave bits, subs, and follows, and were active in chat, really appreciate all of you. So much. We're going to raid on out into Gibbs. Please give him a whole bunch of support for today's Hippy Dippy. And yeah, let's win. Let's win this thing.
Second meeting and a second rate cut this year. So inflation is not low
And they
compared
always
to what
cook
it
the
should
books.
be at this point.
They
Okay,
cook
wait.
the books on the jobs numbers
Why
all
do
the
you
time
have to
too.
add shit like
Isn't the
that
long-
at the
isn't
end,
the
bro?
long-term average
Oh,
3%?
Well, talking about the job numbers,